voice to sound like the
Hello and welcome back to Lorehammer. We got bonus episode 30, and today we're talking about one of my favorite fucking games of all time, Space Marine 1. Hey, I'm your host, Markino, Mark, not Trevor Buzak today. Split personality waivers every now and again, but joining me, we got Gerald. Welcome back.
Howdy.
Our friendly neighborhood tech priest. And we also have Nick joining us again. Hey.
hello, all you 40K nerds out there. It's a pleasure to be back.
Yeah, pleasure to have you. Nerds, eh? One of us.
One of us.
One of my favorite Lorehammer comments ever is people see a picture of me and they're like, "You're not what I pictured." And I always just imagine them picturing the fattest, actually kind of guy ever, you know? No facial hair except for on my like fucking neck, not even the jawline, just neck. Yeah. So that's always a compliment that I take to the bank and really feel encouraged by. So
awesome. Yeah, that's why I'm hoping one day maybe gravity will take my facial hair and just kind of move it down a little bit.
We'll get there. Soon we'll have the technology. With AI, we can do anything.
But all is possible through the Omnissiah.
It's true. It's true. What a wonderful, brave new world we're about to enter into. Well, let's get through some housekeeping before we get into this cool little episode. Discord events. We do Discord stuff. We do lots of different things going on. There's movie nights on Sundays. That's pretty fun. We also are just in the middle of the gangs versus Arbites warfare that we've been kind of working through. I think I'm just gathering up all the lore right now, and we should be doing voting probably by the time this episode's out and battling people off against each other.
I promised I'll have my lore done by the weekend.
Yeah. And if you don't, submit it anyways, and then we'll just do your last at the back end of it, so it's fine. Like
sounds like a winner to me.
Yeah, exactly.
As long as I'm in the final.
Yeah. There's always ways to cheat the system when you know me. You throw me one Patreon bucks and holy fuck, you're really cheat that system.
Man, yeah, I need to go on to Chat GTP or whatever and get them to like AI write up all my lore for my buddies.
I'm not gonna lie, I have done that a couple of times, and man, as much as it's the downfall of humanity, it's pretty fucking neat.
As ironic as it is, the tech priest doesn't use Chat GPT for his writings. How does that make sense?
All natural over there with Gerald. That's
indubitably. Nice. But speaking of bribery and whatnot, you can also join the Imperial Tithe and support the show with the Patreon. You get ad-free versions of the show for just $2.50. That's more than a dang Big Mac now over here in America. But you can also get yeah.
Fuck yeah.
But you can also get the video versions for just $5, which is still not enough for a Big Mac. So there you go. Mark's friendship.
Yeah, and that's only a month. So like, yeah, that's monthly. It's cheap as shit. You might as well throw us a couple bucks, and then these guys get some bucks too. So that's always nice. Throw the wealth around. Our Patreon has been growing and stuff, and that has allowed us to do more episodes and stuff. And I do have in my head that number that when we reach 3 episodes of Lorehammer a week, so that's the goal, and I think we can do it. I think we can accomplish such a feat. So go check out the Patreon.
I think
it's crazy how much. It's crazy how much since we've been back. Just how big it's been growing. It's super cool to see all the fans in the community out there. And by joining the Patreon, it gives you access to the live chat room at the end of the show, which I will always say that's my favorite part of the show, to hear from members of the community, get them on. It gives you a different perspective than just the 3 of us. So that's awesome.
I always think about like how many different people I've actually had on Lorehammer, even before we had this call-in portion. And like, dang, I was damn near close to 100 people if you would have included Listener Lore podcast of just different opinions, and everyone's got their own vibe. So it's been very cool. You get a little sweaty every now and again when you invite some people on and you're like, I've never talked to this person in my life. Please don't drop the N word, please. But so far we've dodged a lot of bullets in that regard. So we'll keep it going strong in that way. But yeah, join the Patreon and gives you access to that live stream. I think we're ready to talk about this episode. Man, this is an episode. This is a story long time in the making. We're talking about a game that was made in 2011. And I remember playing this game when it first came out and just being like, holy fuck, this is my new favorite game. And I sunk countless hours into Warhammer 40k Space Marine. I think that's the official title of it. Now we're just calling it Space Marine 1, I think. The VAT game.
Funny how you say it was a long time ago, because 2011 does not feel like a long time ago to me.
Yeah, but dude, like that's like 13, almost 14 years ago. And this is the craziest thing about this, of why we're doing this episode, because I just got Space Marine 2 to work on my computer. And, you know, the story of Space Marine is they made this badass game that did really fucking well and was really popular. And then the company Relic went out of business. And we thought we lost this gem of a game forever because they left it on a crazy cliffhanger. And for 14 years, we had no idea what happened to our boy Titus. And for 14 years, I just every night lied awake wondering, where did he go? What happened to him? And then boom, out of nowhere, people are like Space Marine 2. And I'm like, holy fuck, how'd you even get the rights for that? And here we are years later. And I'm so hyped, man.
Yeah, I just want to know how you went 14 years without sleep. It's ridiculous. Yeah, you're looking great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've been told it's that Colombian cocaine I've been shipping in, but it's hard to say fully. Rage fuels me is another great option, but yeah. I'm gonna read a little intro here about Space Marine, and then we'll kind of the concept of this episode is this is an old game, and I know lots of new people to Warhammer in general got into Warhammer through Space Marine 2, and they've never played Space Marine 1. They don't know who Titus is. They don't know what he got up to. So we're going to be talking about the story. This isn't so much a review episode as it is more like a lore-based, like this is kind of what happened and how it interacted and all that kind of stuff. So here's the little blurb. Warhammer 40k Space Marine is a third-person shooter game released in 2011, developed by Relic Entertainment, and set in the 40k universe. You play as Captain Titus, a Space Marine of the Ultramarines Chapter, on a mission to protect Forge World under siege by Orks. Yeah. Did you guys play this game? Let's start there maybe before we dive into the lore.
I've played bits and pieces of it forever ago. I'll be completely honest. I needed a refresher on it before we did this episode. So I went through and watched all the cutscenes and everything just to, bring my brain back to it because it's been so long. But I've been playing through Space Marine 2. So I can't give myself a little bit of a refresher before I start that too.
Yeah.
Awesome. I played the first half of Space Marine I was only because I got it based off of your recommendation from old Warhammer. And I really enjoyed it, but then I got busy because work is, very, very busy for me. And I never got around to it again. But I've seen just like Nick, I've seen all the cut scenes and playthroughs. So I know how it ends out.
Yeah. And like, this game was fantastic, although it wasn't the most complex of stories. A lot of the things you could almost see coming. We'll get to it. But fuck, man, it was just a classic in my mind. We had a couple 40k video games out beforehand. Like we had a bunch of the Dawn of War stuff. And I think even around that point, we would have had Dawn of War 2 out. And they were good, but like, they didn't make you feel like a Space Marine, and that's what we all want to feel like. Deep down inside, we all just want to run around smashing Xenos.
Yeah. Those games were definitely because you're controlling a whole unit rather than a single character. So being able to play through that third person kind of view made such a difference.
Yeah.
Amen, Rambo. Amen.
Yeah, you can tell the quality that they put into this game too, because as Rambo said in the chat, Mark Strong was the best voice for Titus, and fuck yes, it was. Yeah, like they put some money and some effort into this, and all the little details. Every time you look around a corner, you find a new little Aquila pattern somewhere. It was so perfect. So let's break down the story of this game, and we'll share what happens to Titus before the events of Space Marine 2. Act 1. Arrival on Forge World Gaia. Setting and background. Forge World Gaia The story begins on Forge World Graia, a heavily industrialized planet in the Imperium of Man, where massive war machines, including Titans, are produced. This world is critical to the Imperium's war efforts, but under an intense assault from a massive Ork Wog, a warmongering army led by Ork war boss eager to seize control of the planet's resources, weaponry, and technology. The role of the Ultramarines. The Ultramarines are a chapter of Space Marines known for their discipline and tactical prowess, received the distress call from Graia. Standard protocol would have that the Imperial Navy or Astra Militarum handle such situations, but with the threat towards Graia's Titan war machines, a small strike force is urgently deployed to prevent Orks from taking over the forges and manufacture lines. One of my favorite parts of this game is like they did Space Marines justice. Like when they say a small force was deployed, they're like, yeah, we'll deploy 3 guys and that should be enough to fucking recapture this planet. And sure as shit it was. And like, you know, you hear that number like for every one Astartes, it's like worth 10,000 Imperial Guardsmen. And you really fucking felt that vibe playing as Captain Titus.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, and why don't we just jump right into it with the landing and an introduction to Captain Titus. Captain Titus and his squad. Captain Titus, the game's protagonist, arrived with 2 Ultramarine squad mates. Sergeant Sidonis, a hardened veteran and with a pragmatic approach to combat, and Leandros, a younger, by-the-book Marine known for his unflinching loyalty to the Codex Astartes, also known as the tactical doctrine of the Space Marines. Each character has distinct perspectives and personalities, which shape their responses to Titus's command decisions. An atypical insertion. Instead of a traditional insertion, Titus makes the bold decision to deploy from orbit via jump pack, allowing him and his squad to bypass the Ork defenses as a surprise entry. Their dramatic descent into the Ork-infested cityscape demonstrates both their fearlessness. Their decision immediately places Titus as a leader who values tactical effectiveness over rigid adherence to protocol.
Right off the bat, this game comes in strong, man. So you see your character just jump out of a plane from thousands of feet as battle cannons are blasting up, and he's dodging these giant shells that explode aircraft behind him and all that. And it's just too wild, man. They come in so hot, and he lands on another Ork ship, and it's just the coolest intro of all time in my mind. It just made you feel so powerful and so like just deadly, man.
This intro actually...
That's like one of my favorite things with games like that is where they throw you right into the thick of it. I mean, when he takes out that initial Ork ship by turning the turret back to like the little command module, like by hand shifting this whole turret as it's firing to take down the ship. Awesome.
Absolutely. And like this whole intro served as like the inspiration for part of my Knight lore, where they're just where the Knight and the Armigers just jump from a rogue trader vessel onto the planet. It was inspired by this whole opening scene. And then you get a feel for all the characters like right then and there, how they're going to be throughout the whole game. Like Titus is about to do this, and here comes Leandros. I got stuff to say about him near the end, but
yeah, no spoilers for Space Marine 2. Let's clarify that for this episode.
I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just going to talk about my dislike for Leandros based on this game. Okay.
Perfect.
Good.
Yeah, you changing your eyes on me to angry eyes. I love that.
Exactly.
I didn't mean to offend the tech priest. Don't grind my limbs off.
But no, it's like immediately Leandros is like, the Codex Astartes does not support this action. So
no, that guy was a Boy Scout. Yeah.
Little bitch boy for sure. But like, yeah, man, they did a great job of developing those characters. Like you said, right off the bat, you already liked the Sergeant Sidonis, and you hated this other guy. You're like, of a chapter of 1,000 guys, why did I get stuck with Leandros? Jeez Louise.
But you know what that opening scene reminded me of? If you ever played Halo 2, when you're on the Mac Gun space station and Master Chief's like taking them back their bomb, and then he jumps out. Yeah, very similar vibes. It's like one of those scenes where you're like, just Yeah, give me more.
Yeah, you're just like,
Titus
how
flashback.
could anyone
Great.
except Master Chief or Captain Titus do this? Like, yeah, in Master Chief's case, he was like flying through space essentially to another ship, and you're just like, this dude just flew hundreds of, well, maybe not hundreds of miles, but he flew across space, hoping that he would just hit this other ship perfectly. And like,
Yeah.
And then
At
just to
least
top it
Titus
all
was
off, he lands back onto a UNSC ship, and then Sergeant Johnson just goes, "For a brick, he flew pretty good."
yeah.
You got to give it to Titus though. At least he grabbed it like a jetpack before he went.
Oh yeah, he's smart enough for that. I'm sorry, Moose. You're gonna have to deal with it.
Yeah, you're already throwing people off in the chat who's never seen your face before, or what's left of it, anyways.
Well, guess what? That's too bad.
He's too high for this shit.
Well, let's get into some of the antagonists of the game a little bit. And I know, Gerald, you just recently on the Deadhammer episodes voiced one of these guys, but you got the initial combat with the Orks coming in. The Ork forces and gameplay mechanics. Upon landing, Titus and his squad engaged with waves of Ork infantry, including basic boys and tougher knobs. This initial sequence introduces the player to the game's unique combat mechanics, which blend melee and ranged attacks. Unlike many shooters, Space Marine emphasizes close-quarter combat, with Titus wielding his iconic chainsword and bolter to devastating effect. The game gives players the feel of a Space Marine's power and brutality as they carve through Orks, who are no match for the might of an Astartes. Bolstered by the Imperial Guard, fighting through Ork ambushes, Titus's squad reaches Imperial Guard positions led by Lieutenant Mira, an officer commanding a severely outnumbered and outgunned force. Mira is desperate for reinforcements, and the arrival of the Ultramarines is a significant morale boost. As Titus assesses the situation, he understands that the Guardsmen have been in dire straits for some time, barely holding the lines against the Ork horde. Now, this lieutenant, I do just want to point out, her last name in the game is Nero, which is awesome.
Oh, well, I'll have you know that I actually named my daughter after Lieutenant Mira. My daughter's name is Mira.
Did you really?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah.
That-
and then
that's awesome.
my wife's like, "Where'd you get this name?" And I'm like, "You don't want to know, but everything I do is 40K."
Well, you better hope B doesn't find out about this episode then.
Yeah, you know, she knows it all. She edits some of these episodes too. So yeah, no, she's gonna learn all about Mira herself. And then when Mira's old enough, I'll let her know her namesake. Yeah, it was so cool. Like, you know, you land on this planet and you just start carving a bloody path through the Orks, and like your bolter, it feels so powerful as you shoot, you're blasting limbs off Orks and just making them crumple into like a red mist. And then when they get close, you do even more damage with your chainsaw. And one of the coolest mechanics of this game was, like, in order to regain health, you have to do finishing moves. So you have to run up to them in close combat and rip them apart with your bare hands. It's just so cool. And then, you know, this all-powerful, like, Astartes then finds these guardsmen and women. And, you know, the awe that they have for him, they're just like, this is a 1 in a million encounter. Like, holy shit, Space Marines are here. There's only 3 of them, but our planet's saved, man. We're free. We're gonna make it.
And I think it's interesting too, because like you hear about how the Astartes, like in lore, sometimes treat like the regular guardsmen of the regular human, like, you're weak, you're mortals, blah 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 blah. But Titus is, even as a Space Marine captain, is so respectful towards Mira, towards all the guardsmen present, that it's kind of mind-boggling, even for an Ultramarine.
Yeah, no, it was great. Like, yeah, like every interaction is just classic in my mind, for sure.
See, I would say that would be like my only negative side of it, is how nice these Ultramarines are to the guardsmen, because usually they don't give them like the time of day normally, unless you're like a salamander, kind of looking out for your average human. But they are definitely like fairly nice to these guardsmen. Like Titus's and Mira's kind of relationship as it builds through the game, it seems like they kind of become close.
Yeah. We talk a little bit more later in this episode about that relationship. I remember playing through it for the first time, and I was just like crossing my fingers, like, please do not say. I hope these characters do not fall in love, and thank God they don't. But very, very interesting, like, relationship dynamic between them, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Securing the Titan Invictus. Mission priority, protecting the Titan. The overarching goal of Act 1 soon becomes clear: to secure a massive war machine known as the Warlord-class Titan named Invictus. Titans are colossal walking weapons of mass destruction, and the Orks are pushing towards Invictus to command it for their own use. If the Orks managed to seize Invictus, they would gain control of its firepower, putting both Graia and potentially nearby Imperial systems at catastrophic risk. Reactivating defense systems. To protect the Titan, Titus and his squad undertake a mission to restore Graia's planetary defenses, which had been disabled during the Orks' assault. They battle through more Ork forces to reach the control points for the anti-air guns and other defense mechanisms. Reactivating their systems will provide some much-needed support for the overwhelming Imperial forces on the ground. I just... Once again, you're going to hear me say this 1,000 times. I just love how they approach this and everything in it. The scale is so massive. Like when we're talking about one Warlord Titan changing the shape of not only this planet's fate, but also planets in the sector, everything is just really dialed up and like everything is over the top powerful. I love that aspect of it.
Just saying though, how cool would it have been to take on a Warlord class Titan that's been turned into a Mega Gargant, and you're just a single Space Marine? That would have been awesome. Just saying.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The one gripe I did have about it is this is specifically taking place on a Forge world. You never see a Mechanicus Tech Priest at all in the game. It's just Orks, spoiler alert later, and Guard. So
yeah, I kind of noticed that too. And then I've been playing through Space Marine 2, and you see a lot of tech priests and servitors and stuff. Like they definitely amped that around and changed that up, which was very nice to see.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. And just some of the background conversations in Space Marine 2 between the tech priests and the menials and the servitors, it's awesome.
Yeah. I always feel like I'm eavesdropping, walking around on the gantries of that ship, trying to what are these guys saying?
Quick comment from Rambo here. Well, Titus doesn't fall in love, but who can say the same thing about Mira?
And she would be right to fall in love with such a manly man. You could not hold it against her. He's going to keep her warm at night and safe.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But I guess go ahead.
The other fun part about this kind of scene is your first task is to secure the airspace, and you do the classic. You go to a massive anti-aircraft gun, and it needs to be loaded with a shell. So you start dragging this shell the size of a fucking house around, and you're pushing it down these rails, and Orks are attacking you. So you stop and kill half a dozen Orks, and then you keep pushing this massive shell towards the loading barrel. And that's kind of the one mission. You watch it go up the elevator as you're fighting off Orks, and then you finally fire this cannon. You're just oh my god, it's all so big and over the top.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I love that on the shell too. They have the arches built into it with all the skulls around it, so it feels like that very gothic feel. And this is just like a cannon shell that they're loading in.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. And the other thing of note too is because this is a Forge world made to build a Warlord Titan, the very opening cutscene is the emergency transmission, and it's a distress signal for the Administratum, and the first question they ask is "Exterminatus?" ? And they keep on saying no. Assets are too valuable to lose. No. Okay, we'll send a company of Ultramarines. Boom.
Yeah.
So speaking of Ultramarines, a heroic stand, pushing back the Ork horde. Titus leads several counterattacks to buy time and secure key locations. This series of skirmishes showcases the raw power of the Ultramarines and the terror they inspire in their enemies. In gameplay, this translates to high action sequences where players must balance Titus's melee powers with ranged abilities to survive relentless Ork waves. Ork bosses and war machines. During the sequence, players face stronger Ork units, including heavily armored knobs and intimidating Ork war machines. These enemies require strategic thinking and force the player to utilize all available resources, showcasing the difficulty and intensity of the invasion Graia is facing. So, and obviously it's it's hard to not play orcs well, but this game really does showcase orcs at their finest, especially their war boss. I think his name's Grimskull, and it's just that's always where the meme goes. Space Marine,
Space Marine. Yeah, for sure. They're all just yelling that at you. Fuck.
Yeah, you got to paint it red because it goes faster.
Yeah. Yeah, I love just the waves, man. Like literally, like you must kill thousands of orcs throughout this campaign.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember the scene where you're looking up and you see all the asteroids coming in, and they're all orc drop pods. And Sidonis looks at you and he's like, "Oh, there's millions more coming in." It's like I just mowed down like a couple thousand of them, you know.
And once again, the Imperium solution was like deploy 3 Space Marines. That should do the trick.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
do they know it does?
Got it. Testing my memory. Isn't there like a whole story too of like a small like kill team squad of Space Marines, and they go and like wipe out a ship single-handedly, or like some sort of like massive space Hulk or something? I can't remember off the top of my head, but it definitely gives me those vibes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think like one of the sayings or the memes goes like, if you want one mission done on a continent, you send 1 Space Marine. If you need something taken care of on the planet, you send a squad. A system, maybe a couple squads, and anything bigger than that, shit's about to go down if they have to send a company or more's worth of Space Marines.
Yeah, like you just imagine being that Imperial Guardsman, and you're just kind of like, you're not expected to ever see Space Marines, and then you finally see one, something that most of the Imperium never sees, and like, holy fuck, 1 Space Marine, and then another shows up, and the more that show up, you're like, oh, I think we're actually all fucked if this many show up. Like, oh god.
Yeah, what is it like? Not even like 1% of like Imperial Guard will ever see a Space Marine or something in their entire life. But I'm just saying, like, if I was that guardsman, a Space Marine showed up, it'd be hard not to fanboy a little bit, especially when they're built up as such a legend.
Well, especially when you see like the Space Marine 2, the teaser trailer for Space Marine 2, and then you got the one guardsman in that cutscene. It's like, oh, his angels.
Yeah. Yeah, like that's how they would see him. The Imperium's so religious, and like a lot of planets, depending on where they recruited from, like just imagine some like feral hive world or PDF type people or whatever, just feral people that have literally built up that these are the Emperor's angels. These are actual like incarnate angels, that cannot be killed, cannot be stopped. You hear all the myth and all the rumors that surrounds them of just 5 guys securing a planet or whatever. Like they would be truly awe-inspiring.
Oh yeah.
Long live Sanguinius.
How would be his name?
Well, throughout the game, you also collaborate a lot with the Imperial Guard. Lieutenant Mira and her guardsmen become crucial allies. Through a series of radio conversations, Mira and Titus coordinate defensive strategies, symbolizing the respect and camaraderie between the Imperial Guard and the Space Marines. This alliance also highlights Titus's pragmatic and compassionate side, as he respects Mira's dedication and courage, despite the limitation and losses she and her troops have faced. And I'm telling you, Titus would fit right in with the Salamanders.
Yeah. I just think like, if you're not saving the people of the Imperium, what's it all about, Like, yeah, the Titan's important, but if you don't have those people and the respect for those people, like what's it all for? What are you actually fighting for? The teaser of the true threat. So as the plot thickens, you get mysterious energy signals. As the Ultramarines fight their way through Ork forces and help secure defensive positions, they begin picking up strange energy signals emanating from deep within Graia's industrial complexes. These signals hint at a greater mystery on the Forge world and foreshadow the involvement of chaos, an insidious and corrupting force that is yet to fully reveal itself in the story. Although Titus and his squad don't yet know the specifics, they recognize that something more sinister than an Ork invasion might be at play. Yeah.
Yep. I guess we'll continue the plot if no one else has anything to add here. The Act 1 climax toward the heart of Graia. A growing sense of foreboding. As Act 1 nears its end, Titus and his squad begin to begin to understand the scale and stakes of their mission. The Imperial Guard is reaching its breaking point, and the Orks are becoming increasingly aggressive in their attempts to seize Graia's resources. Titus realizes that his task may be more complicated than they initially thought, and that the strange signals detected within the Forge world may represent a far greater threat than he had anticipated. Moving forward, Act 1 concludes with Titus rallying his squad and to press deeper into Graia, fully committed to uncovering the source of the strange signals while ensuring the safety of the Titan Invictus. This set the stage for Act 2, where the mysterious energy source and its connection to the Inquisitor Drogon are revealed, leading to even darker revelations.
They did such a good game with character development where they told you what was going to happen without telling you what was going to happen. Like, I swear, as soon as I saw this Inquisitor, I'm like, this isn't going to end well. I know this guy's going to fuck me over. I just know it.
Well, all you had to do is hear the name Inquisitor, and you already know stuff's not going to go well.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's funny is I noticed a lot of times throughout the game too, just how much some of the, like, especially Titus kind of backtalks the Inquisitors a little bit, especially when Inquisitor Thrax comes in at the end and he like kind of stands up face to face with him, like squaring off against him. Like, man, that guy could take you out right now if he wanted to. He just got to flash his seal and you're gone for heresy. Like,
good fucking
away.
luck. Titus just kills 1 million fucking orcs single-handedly. You're thinking Inquisitor's gonna stop this guy?
Right. I gotta say too, the character design for Drogon was also pretty sweet. I liked how like half of his head had that metal plate in it, and then his armor just had like these super deep scratches, like he'd been in the thick of it. So kind of gives you like that thing that, you know, he's no slouch.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll kind of move on to Drogon and his machinations. As the Ultramarines press deeper into Graia's Forge world, they encounter an Imperial Inquisitor named Drogon. Drogon appears somewhat disheveled and exhausted as he's been working on a secret project to counter the Ork threat on the planet. He introduced as a figure of mystery and power, holding the authority of the Inquisition, which even the Ultramarines must respect. Drogon hints at having a plan to eliminate the Ork forces, but needs the assistance of the Ultramarines to complete it. They have an experimental weapon and a power source that they're currently working on. Drogon reveals he's been developing a weapon powered by a device called the Power Source. This Power Source is a potent energy artifact capable of vast potential devastating output, theoretically powerful enough to eliminate entire waves of orcs in a single strike. Drogon's plan is to use the Power Source as a weapon to turn the tide against the Orks, who are pushing even closer to the key areas of the Forge world. Yeah, I think he calls it the Psychic Scourge in game. And like Titus was asking him, well, why haven't you told me about this before? And Drogon's saying it's so powerful that if it misfires, it could actually crack the planet in half. And I was like, damn.
Damn. Yeah. Yeah, it's such a cool kind of item that they introduce where it's very unique. You know, you don't hear that this isn't just some, like, we've heard of Titans before. We know what a Titan can do, but this is a very unique thing where it's like, oh shit, so you've somehow harnessed psychic power. Like, what does that look like when you activate this? Does it send out, is it like an EMP but for human souls, or for souls, you know, where it's like just blasts out and rips everyone's soul out and then all the orcs just collapse in on themselves? like they just, you know, that Inquisitor is keeping his secrets close to the chest, and while they foreshadow so much, you still like how does this actually work? What does this weapon actually do?
And of course, in true 40K style and fashion, like if something were to go wrong with it, boom, it's going to crack the planet, just like Hadia.
Oh man, you know, I always kind of imagine it a little bit like the scene at the end of the Lord of the Rings when Frodo drops the ring into Mount Doom, and then you see the shockwave go out and it kind of knocks all the orcs over, something like that. But you just see their souls get ripped out or something. If you got to see that, would have been badass.
Yeah, that's a great scene in Lord of the Rings. I love when like the tower itself, Barad-dûr, is it? I don't know. I forget what it's called, but it falls and then and then it kind of explodes out sideways. Like, yeah, so cool. Yeah. Rambo says Drogon's headplate always reminded me of Zog from the Zorg from the Fifth Element. I haven't seen that. Have either of you?
Oh, you have not
Oh
seen
yes,
this?
I know exactly what he's
Oh.
talking about. I know
Yeah,
exactly
Gary
what he's talking
Oldman.
about.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Is that something we need to do Sunday night movie night watching? Fifth
We are
Element?
absolutely going to. I'm going to drag you into that. Make sure you sit down with your bucket of popcorn, and we're going to watch Fifth Element.
Oh, perfect. I love it. The power source retrieval mission. Securing the power source. Titus and his squad agree to help Drogon retrieve the power source, a high-risk artifact stored in a heavily fortified location deep within Graia. Alongside battling through Orc forces, the Ultramarines must also protect Drogon, who has limited combat ability and is vulnerable to the continuous Orc attacks. Battling through Orc fortifications. As the Ultramarines fight their way through dense Orc-infested areas, the intensity of the combat escalates. Players face increasingly dangerous Orc units, including the more resilient knobs and even mechanized Orc war machines that require creative tactics to destroy. This sequence not only increases the challenge, but showcases the vast scale of the Orc invasion and the importance of retrieving the power source to avoid losing the Forge world entirely.
Yeah, one thing I kind of wish they had done in Space Marine 1 and Space Marine 2 would add like some sort of kill counter to keep track of just how many orcs you're slaughtering.
Yeah, that would be wild. I know on like on Steam, I'm pretty sure they do have like a kill counter somewhere. I do recall it, but maybe it's actually built into the game because they had like all those unlocks or whatever. It's like if you kill 40,000 people, you unlock this battle hardened armor.
Oh,
so
like the achievements.
Yeah. But no, you definitely need that. Like, you definitely need that in corner, top right and center. You got your ammo count, you got your kill count. Yeah, for sure.
Right.
But I guess while we're talking about the power source and everything, so discovering the power source's true nature, the power source's strange properties. When the Ultramarines finally reach the power source, they find it emitting strange energies unlike any they've seen before. Even for the Ultramarines who are well versed in powerful artifacts, the power source seems unusually potent and unsettling. Titus, who handles the power source briefly, senses something strange about its nature, hinting that it may be something beyond man's mere imperial technology. Signs of Drogon's deception. Drogon's behavior around the power source is increasingly erratic. He speaks about the energy of the device in reverence, almost obsessive terms, with which raises questions in Titus's mind. However, Drogon insists that this weapon is the only hope to save Graia, and is adamant that they proceed quickly with activating it. Despite their suspicions, Titus and his squad decide to move forward, prioritizing the mission and the potential salvation of Graia over the doubts about Drogon.
So I just want to say, Grimaldus just brought up in the chat talking about Karn's helmet mod. I actually just listened to a short story, like an audio drama about. It was in the perspective of Karn, and he's watching the kill counter in the side of his HUD as it's like ticking up with all of his kills, and that's the only number he cares about when he's in like his berserker mode, because every kill is like a soul he's sending to Khorne.
Yeah,
super cool.
Soon his whole like island it's just gonna be like 999999999. He has to like try to look through the nines on his visor. Like Grimaldo says, kills a bio titan. It still only counts as one.
Well, moving into activating of this experimental weapon, Drogon directs the Ultramarines to a central control facility where the weapon can be powered up by using the power source. As they approach, the tension increases, with wave after wave of Orc attacks trying to disrupt their path. The Ultramarines, led by Titus's stoic resolve, battle their way through and clear the facility, setting up the power source and readying the experimental weapon. Once activated, the weapon harnesses the power source's immense energy to devastating effect, vaporizing scores of orcs. The blast not only proves the weapon's capability, but demonstrates the scale of Drogon's creation, emphasizing just how potent and volatile the power source really is. The impact is overwhelming, leaving an eerie silence in its wake, as it's something unnatural has been disturbed by the release of this energy. So I do want to throw out here because I know like throughout Space Marine 1, you got Leandris, and he is, by the book and questioning Titus's resolve about being warp affected. But by devastating using this weapon, doesn't it harness warp energy, and isn't everyone technically affected by the warp around this weapon?
Yeah. Hey, Leandros, we have some questions for you now. All of a sudden, knock, knock, knock. It's the Inquisition. Yeah. It is funny too that like Leandros is so like, by the book, yet he's constantly riding Titus's back. Like, yo, he's your captain. You need to fucking listen to this guy. But yeah, it's that weird kind of thing where it's like, yeah, he's so by the book, and maybe he almost thinks he's above this kind of chaos influence even. Like he clearly thinks he knows better than his captain who served for 2 centuries.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you've got the chaplains. The chaplains are there to, judge you and see if you're falling to chaos or heresy. He's just this kind of newbie space marine.
Yeah. This idealized version of what a space marine should be, for sure.
Yep.
A dark revelation. Chaos interference. Chaos makes it move. Immediately following the weapon's activation, a shocking twist reveals the truth about Drogon. Titus and his squad are confronted by a powerful chaos sorcerer named Nemeroth, who emerges through a warp rift. Nemeroth reveals that Drogon has been under his influence and manipulation for some time. In fact, Drogon is a puppet under Nemeroth's control, using the Inquisitor as a vessel to manipulate events and bring the power source under the control of chaos. Unleashing chaos forces. The activation of the power source's weapon not only devastates the Orks' forces, but also tears open a portal to the warp, a dimension of chaos. This rift allows chaos forces to enter Graia, introducing a terrifying new threat that overshadows the Ork invasion. This marks a turning point for the Ultramarines, as they realize they're now facing the legions of chaos, particularly the Chaos Space Marines of the Wordbearers Legion and their demonic allies. Nemeroth's ambitions. Nemeroth, the Chaos Sorcerer leading the incursion, is revealed to have a dark plan to use the power source as a key to unlocking even greater warp power, allowing him to ascend to demonhood and amplifying his control over the warp. By manipulating Drogon and unleashing chaos upon Graia, Nemeroth seeks to claim the Forge world for his own, transforming it into a fortress of chaos and using its resources to fuel his war against the Imperium. Maybe my only complaint about this whole game is you're this badass space marine, and I love that you're plowing through orcs, but then you pretty much treat Chaos Space Marines the same way you would treat an Orc Knob. And the amount of Chaos Space Marines you would kill in that game, I'm just like, man, yeah, you're a captain, and yeah, you're probably one of the best in the company, but like you plow through Chaos Space Marines like they're nothing. Kind of rubs me the wrong way, but
yeah, just a little bit. I mean, they're going to be roughly the same strength as you, give or take, and to take down just scores of them is crazy.
Yeah. It should be tantamount to, like, say, to bring this in Halo terms, fighting elites who are supposed to be your equal, and the orcs will be the grunts. So, yeah, I can understand that complaint. I always thought they were world eaters because in the cutscene, it was blood letters that came out of the portal first. But
yeah, but with word bearers, they they serve every chaos god. So,
yep, you're right about that. So,
yeah, because Nemeroth is a sorcerer, and that's definitely like more leaning towards siege. And then you got the bloodletters, and then aren't there also Nurgle drones in it as well? I can't remember. Again, it's been forever.
Yeah, they definitely.
I actually hadn't played through that part, so I don't know like all the entirety of the chaos side that you'd be fighting. So,
gotcha.
But I do find it kind of funny with that introductory cutscene was like you're activating the power source against the orcs. it goes off. All the orcs are still standing, and so the orc boss just goes, "Is that supposed to hurt, Space Marine?" And then boom, here comes some blood letters just plowing through his board.
Yeah. yeah. Just gets fucking rolled.
So we were actually talking about this before the episode, and the old school like Marine look, and Nemiroth in his giant Terminator armor, where he's got the little head, but then the giant bulky body. Just imagining what he looks like underneath that armor.
Yeah, somebody dropped a brick on his head, and he's just like, just kind of just sunk in on himself. But yeah, this kind of reveals Nemiroth's plan. You know, this guy, as many Chaos warlords want, he wants to become a Demon Prince. That's his goal.
I mean, you're already Chaos Space Marine. What else to do from there but try to go up? So, but speaking of new enemies, Chaos Space Marines and Demons. Facing Chaos Marines and Demons, with Nemiroth's intentions, Titus and his squad find themselves facing a new, even deadlier breed of enemy. Well, I'm sure Mark and Nick disagree, but Chaos Space Marines, corrupted versions of Space Marines who serve the dark gods of chaos, join the battle. These enemies are far more dangerous and tactically challenging than the Orks, capable of matching the Ultramarines in strength, skill, and firepower. Again, disagree, but they also encounter.
Yeah, Titus's chainsword strongly disagrees on that point of being equal to him.
Well, maybe because he's a captain, he just gets a captain's chainsword. It might be just built different.
Yeah, yeah. Made of the Emperor's own teeth. It will chew through heretic and Xenos alike.
Nom 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 nom. Demons of Chaos, otherworldly creatures from the warp, materialize into the battlefield, adding to the surreal horror of the invasion. Chaos corruption. Graia itself begins to show signs of corruption. This previously industrial environment starts warping with strange sigils, dark energies, and chaotic growths appearing throughout the Forge world. This transformation underscores the taint of chaos, creating a darker, more ominous atmosphere as Titus and his squad press on. The battle for Graia shifts from a planetary defense against orcs to a fight for survival against the corrupting influence of chaos.
Yeah, it is funny to think that like the orcs are kind of just like, fucking cool. We didn't really care about this planet anyways. Now we just got new enemies. Like nothing really changed for them, but now the Imperium's like, oh man, now there's like two armies. Like, yeah, the orcs are still having a great time here. Though.
In 40K, they're probably the ones having the most fun. You know, all they care about is the fight, and the more enemies you can throw into it for them to fight, the more fun they're going to have.
I was watching Warhammer lore tuber, and he basically said when you're talking about win conditions for each of the factions, orcs have been winning since day one. So.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts about orcs is like they want the fight. They want an equal fight as well. You know, if they're winning too much because they have cool fancy pistols and the people they're fighting don't, they're going to drop their pistols or turn their pistols into clubs because they want that challenge. That's what they get off to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have an interesting comment from Rambo here. By Space Marine standards, Leandros was still young. He just didn't have enough experience to think outside the box. So
now I raise you this thought, though: the older a Space Marine gets, the more indoctrinated he would get. Dun 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 dun.
Gasp.
Yeah, and you think a younger Space Marine, they'd be so instilled to listening to their captains and their elders and stuff like that instead of questioning them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this goes against the Codex Astartes. Fuck, man, that haunts my dreams. I hate it.
Dude, you're telling me. Yeah.
Fucking, I'll tell you what, Leandros, I ain't ever read that shit because it's in High Gothic and I can't read it. So, chainsword to the face.
We've slowly been getting lessons to learn, but you know it's a slow process. Well, throughout the game, you come to realize that Titus has a resilience to chaos. As the Ultramarines continue their mission, something unusual about Captain Titus becomes apparent. Exposure to the power source and the proximity to chaos energies don't seem to affect Titus the way they would affect others. Normally, direct exposure to the energies of chaos would be corrupting or damaging, dangerous to most, even to the Space Marines. However, Titus remains unaffected, an ability that seems almost unnatural. This resistance to chaos becomes a topic of suspicion, particularly for Leandros, who is increasingly uneasy with Titus's seeming immunity to the influence of the warp. It slowly builds tension in the squad. Leandro's suspicions about Titus's resistance to chaos creates tensions within the squad. Although Sergeant Sidonus remains loyal to Titus, Leandros starts to doubt his captain's purity and adherence to the Codex Astartes. This foreshadows potential conflicts within the team and adds a layer of internal drama as Titus's own squad mates begin to wonder whether his captain might be tainted by chaos. So I do wonder, with such a powerful warp device, I'm surprised no Grey Knights end up showing up.
Yeah. And like a huge warp invasion, but maybe it was just so sudden and so secret that the Grey Knights just had no clue for sure. But
yeah,
there's a lot of
the galaxy.
Yeah, they got a million worlds they got to defend. What's Graya to them, I suppose.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of cool scenes where, like, Titus is holding this this warp artifact that almost looks like the size of a water bottle type thing, maybe a touch more clunkier, but like, and it's glowing powerful blue and stuff and sparking warp energy off it. And there's times where, he like reaches for it and he has to like fight this like energy, but then he grabs it and like subdates it essentially and is able to like hook it on his belt. And he kind of does this a few times where he like has to fight the raw powers of chaos and then he kind of comes out unscathed.
Yeah, crazy. It always kind of remind me of like a Gothic lantern a little bit.
Yeah. That's a good way to describe it for sure. And way better than my fucking water bottle analogy.
And an interesting point too about Leandros is like there's one scene early on in the game where you're mowing down orcs with your whole squad, and Space Marines are supposed to be like efficient. It's like boom to the head, okay, go on to the next one, boom, 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 and just not really think about it later. But then you go to one level where you're just seeing Leandros, and he is just wailing on just this one singular orc, almost out of just pure malice, which obviously a Space Marine is so indoctrinated, that's how it's supposed to be. But even for Leandros, a brand new Space Marine, that almost came off as too much, to where even Titus had to say, enough, stop. So
you're wasting the Emperor's precious bolt guns. Stop it. Yeah. It's fun the way they kind of banter amongst themselves in the game between the three Space Marines, where it's like, they're knee deep in orcs, and they're still just cracking some jokes like, haha, this guy stood no chance, whatever kind of goofy kind of sayings they had. But it's this like kind of banter. They're almost playful with each other as they just rip apart orcs one by one,
Yeah, it always reminds me, there's a line in, I think it's Enemy at the Gate, where it's the Russians, and they say, we've got 1 million rounds at home. Send a few bullets home with the enemy.
Yeah, that's a nice one. That's a great movie. I got to watch that one again. Enemy at the Gate, yeah. The quest to close the warp rift. A new mission objective. Titus realizes that the only way to save Graya is to find a way to close the warp rift. This decision marks a major shift in the Ultramarines' mission. Instead of simply defending Graya from orcs, they must now prevent the entire Forge world from being overrun by chaos. Closing the rift will require securing and using the power source, risking further exposure to its potentially corrupting energies. Relentless battle against chaos. The Ultramarines continue their advance, now focusing on containing and countering the chaos forces spreading across Gaia. Act 2 is filled with the intense combat sequences as Titus and his team confront Chaos Space Marines, demons, and increasingly formidable warp-spawned threats. Players experience overwhelming might of the chaos forces and are forced to adapt their tactics to overcome enemies that are every bit as deadly as the Space Marines himself. I love that scene where the warp rift does open up and you're standing basically on top of this spire, and Nimrod's plan kind of comes into fruition where he opens up this warp rift and the planet gets invaded and ships start flying through. And it's always this cool thing where you can see the warp like that. I get asked a lot through email and messages like, yo, could Cadia see the Eye of Terror from their planet? Like, can they actually see that warp anomaly? And like, this like, this
I think so.
swirling mass of chaos and energy, and just very cool, that scene of him opening it up.
Super cool. And one thing you got to give Space Marines is their tenacity and their stamina. I mean, they'll go through things like this where they're trying to close these Chaos Rift gates, and then they have almost no downtime unless you're going into stasis for a couple dozen years, and then they're immediately next into the next sort of combat.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I'm
Yeah,
tired
like
at the end of an
killing
8-hour workday.
Yeah, killing any enemy that they're like, Xenos, that's a standard day, that's fine, but then they get to Chaos at Space Marines, like, oh fuck, now this is a work day. But yeah, they endure.
So I guess we're still in Act 2 here. So we got on the brink of corruption, facing Nimroth as Act 2 reaches its climax. Titus and his squad. Sorry, I'm gonna get my reading eyes on. Okay, here we go. Titus and his squad face off with Nimroth, who has positioned himself to seize power and use it to complete his ascension to demonhood. Nimroth taunts Titus, casting doubt on his loyalty and hinting that the captain's resistance to chaos might be something darker. This encounter sets up a personal rivalry between Titus and Nimroth, with the power source at the center of their conflict. And now Titus is faced with nearly impossible choice. To prevent Nimroth's ascension, he must harness the power source energy once more, risking further exposure to chaos. Titus's loyalty to the Imperium and his own unshakable resolve drive him forward, but the path ahead promises ever greater peril as the chaos incursion reaches its peak.
Yeah, things just keep getting worse and worse. We jump back a little bit. Rambo says, if the Grey Knight showed up, we wouldn't even know this story. Mind wipes and cullings for all. Hooray!
There's a Metal Gear Solid game where you fight a boss, and he will, if you actually have to unplug your controller, unplug it into the second controller spot to be able to fight him. Oh, yeah, because it'll read like your controls. So you actually, if you attack a statue in this boss fight, it will tell you to unplug your controller and plug it into the next spot to be able to defeat him. But going off of Rambo's comment here about the mind wipes, could you imagine if you beat this game and then it deletes all your save data, sends you back to the beginning because it just mind wipes you?
What was that boss's name? Was it Psychomantis?
Yeah, Psychomantis. That's it.
Psychomantis.
Man, that's crazy. I've never heard of such a fucking game mechanic before. That's like you're playing Dungeons and Dragons and like open and close the book 4 times. Like just fucking opening and closing. Like, and I don't know why you made me do that, but PS1, okay.
You could do that. So yeah, it's crazy that they thought of that back then.
Yeah, weird, man. Grimaldus comment says, isn't a side effect of being near the Eye of Terror purplish eyes? Yeah, does that happen to everyone, or is that kind of like a chance, 50% of the population has this? Do we know?
I'm pretty sure that everyone on Cadia, all the Imperial Guards were known for having purple eyes.
Yeah, that was the main thing as far as lore. And in the Dark Tide game, if you play as a guardsman, you can choose like what your home planet is. If you choose Cadia, then you do have the option to give them purple eyes if you wanted to for the character creator.
That's cool. That's like that's a very cool kind of distinguishing feature that they all have, I guess. Very cool. I gotta go back and paint some Cadians different. Give them little purple eye dots now.
Just about to say, yeah, if you want to have some like true homegrown Cadia Imperial Guard, just give him like tiny little toothpick dot purple irises.
Perfect.
Well, moving into the third act here, the battle for Grey and the final confrontation with Chaos, a world on brink. Act 3 begins with Grey teetering on the edge of ruin, overrun by Chaos forces after Nimroth unleashes the power of the Warp Rift. The once industrial landscape of the Forge world has become a nightmarish battleground. The Ultramarines, battered but resolute, are determined to close the rift and end the Chaos invasion, fully aware that the fate of the planet and perhaps the Imperium itself hangs in the balance. Captain Titus, Sergeant Sidonis, and Landros must navigate through areas now completely under Chaos control, filled with corrupted machinery, twisted landscapes, and Chaos sigils marking the presence of the Dark Gods. The squad faces waves of Chaos Space Marines, demons, and mutants, forcing them to fight tooth and nail as they push towards the Manufactorum where the power source lies. Yeah, when you go from fighting the Orks to fighting the Chaos, it very cool, very cool.
Yeah, Yeah, it's cool. The one scene, like, you strap your jump pack back on, and then there's flying spires now that are just floating because of warp powers. And you jump from one to another, and they're all just like magically flying and supported. Very cool. The Unyielding Assault, Chaos Space Marines and Demons, Elite Chaos Warriors. The Ultramarines' opponents become deadlier as they confront elite Chaos Space Marines armed with powerful warp-infused weaponry. The Chaos Marines, veterans of centuries of battle and twisted by the warp, are ruthless and relentless. They are more than a match for even the Ultramarines, engaging Titus's team in brutal close combat, while demons attack from all sides. The Ultramarines, already weary from a long battle, must summon every ounce of strength to overcome these foes. Demonic oppression. As Titus and his squad progress, demons of the warp appear in greater numbers, summoned through the warp rift. Some are monstrous, while other grotesque bodies and reality warping abilities require Titus to constantly adapt to counter their supernatural powers. The rift's influence creates horrifying visions, casting a surreal, oppressive atmosphere over the final march towards Nemeroth's stronghold. Yeah, like at this point, man, if you're a guardsman on this planet, still somehow you've survived this orc invasion, and now like you got this chaos invasion, your vision is becoming swirled and haunted, and just it would be upsetting. I would be upset by it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
the Inquisition's not going to let you live after that.
Yeah.
You've become so tainted by all this warp energy around you. You're probably not going to be around to tell about it.
Yeah, pretty much. And just as things go from bad to worse, our Giga Chad Sergeant Sidonis, well, a personal loss. As they close in on Nemeroth's position, Sergeant Sidonis, Titus's loyal second in command, is ambushed and mortally wounded by Chaos forces. Sidonis' death marks a pivotal moment for Titus and Leandros. As Sidonis had been steadfast brothers in arms and an anchor for the team throughout the mission, Titus is visibly shaken, but Leandros' reaction hints at an even deeper resentment and mistrust towards his captain. Sidonis' loss is deeply personal for Titus, adding a renewed sense of urgency and a desire for vengeance to this mission. Increased tensions between Titus and Leandros. Sidonis' death intensifies Leandros' suspicion of Titus's supposed resistance to chaos corruption, suggesting that Titus's immunity to the warp could be a sign of taint rather than strength. Leandros openly questions Titus's leadership, believing his captain may be corrupted by chaos. A betrayal of the Codex is... Oh, yes, we're smashing through a bunch of Chaos Space Marines, and yet you have the gall to say that your captain is becoming corrupted by chaos. Anyways.
How dare you?
A betrayal of the Codex Astartes, the sacred tome that dictates Space Marine conduct. This distrust reaches a boiling point when the two remain locked in a strained alliance against their common enemy, but Leandros' faith in Titus is visibly eroded.
Yeah, I remember seeing the scene where it's Sidonis and you just see Nemeroth's lightning claws go through his stomach, and my first thought was like, well shit, now I gotta spend the rest of the game with Leandros. God.
Shit, he left me with this guy. My first thought was, man, if only Primaris Marines existed, then he could have just gone through the Rubicon and been fine.
Yeah. Right. He's just a couple centuries too early.
It's just mortally wounded. It's no big deal. Just go through the Rubicon. You'll be fine. Rebuild bigger, better, stronger, faster than ever before. But too soon. Too soon. A man before his time.
Well, reaching the climax of the game and Nemeroth's ritual and securing the power source, Titus and Leandros finally reach the Manufactorum, where the power source has been secured by Nemeroth and his chaos forces. The environment is a nightmarish blend of industrial decay and dark arcane energy. Titus realizes that Nemeroth's plan to harness the power source is a forbidden ritual that would grant him the power of a demon prince, a monstrous entity with unparalleled strength and influence over the warp. His ambitions, Nemeroth's plan is revealed in full. He intends to use the power source to become a demon prince, solidifying his influence in the material world and making it an unstoppable force. This transformation would give Nemeroth vast powers, enabling him to spread chaos not only over Gaia, but potentially other worlds as well. Nemeroth taunts Titus, suggesting that his resistance to the warp is evidence of a deeper connection to the chaos, further fueling Leandros' doubt. And then Nemeroth begins his ritual, drawing on the warp energy around him. While the power source pulses with chaotic energy, Titus reveals the only way to stop Nemeroth is to interrupt the ritual and prevent his ascension. In a harrowing battle, Titus and Leandros confront chaos forces, protecting Nemeroth, breaking through their defense and disrupting the ritual.
Man, I would be pissed if I was Titus. This whole time, it's like, get off my back, Leandros. There are literal Chaos Space Marines over there, and you're gonna keep chirping in my ear. Oh, you might be corrupted. I'm like, we're surrounded by demons. Go kill something. Like, jeez Louise. Like, go berate somebody else.
Just this talk of Leandros is bringing out my angry eyes right now.
No, not the angry eyes.
Dude's got my tech priest blood and oil boiling right.
Well, what I think is awesome is they use the power source and load it into that Invictus Titan, and then overpower its railgun or its weapon systems to actually fire it at the spire that Nemeroth's in. And then, like, the chunks of the spire are floating from all the warp fuckery going on.
Yeah, that's a classic one. Yeah, I think it must have been a Nova cannon. I think that Titan had.
I think so.
Cool.
Yeah.
There's so many weapons. Like, you got the Nova cannon, the railgun, or not the railguns, but the volcano lance, and
sure. Yeah.
Not the railgun. That's a Tau thing.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Sympathizer. If Leandros is here, he would have some questions for your loyalties.
I would have some questions for Leandros, but that's neither here nor there. Okay. Angry thoughts gone.
The climactic battle, Titus versus Nemeroth. The final showdown. Titus confronts Nemeroth in a fierce one-on-one battle atop a massive structure overlooking corrupted landscape of Graia. Nemeroth's transformation is nearly complete, giving him powers beyond that of a normal Chaos Space Marine. He wields warp-based abilities, manipulating the environment and using dark magic to assault Titus. The battle is grueling, and Nemeroth teleporting, summoning warp lightning, and using sorcerer's powers to trap and weaken Titus. Titus's defiance. Despite Nemeroth's immense power, Titus' unyielding resilience and refusal to succumb to chaos prove that he is great strength. As the battle progresses, Titus endures wave after wave of Nemeroth's attacks, driven by a combination of honor, duty, and the memory of his fallen comrade Sidonus. In the climactic moment, Titus manages to gain the upper hand, utilizing his own willpower and combat prowess to finally overcome Nemeroth's defenses and deliver the fatal blow. Nemeroth's defeat and the power source release. With Nemeroth's defeated, the power source is left uncontained, creating a surge of warp energy that threatens to destroy the area. Titus narrowly escapes, having finally closed the rift and vanquished the chaos incursion. The power source energies dissipate, and the warp influence on Graia begins to fade, signaling the end of the chaos invasion.
So I just want to say, with this scene where they're falling down the tower and they're fighting each other, I mean, it is super epic. And then Titus, two hands crushes Nemeroth's head.
Yeah.
If only Nemeroth had worn a helmet.
Fuck. This is why you always wear your helmet, whether you're riding a bike or fighting Ultramarines.
And he's a chaos Terminator. They have the best Terminator helmets with the tusks.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, with the rhino tusks or
Oh man.
I'm telling you though, you can't be a named character and wear a helmet. It's just they don't match up.
One of the fun things about this game was they did the maybe I'm saying it wrong, but like the quick action sequences where it's like press A, and if you don't, then you mess up the sequence, and if you mess up too many times, you lose. But like quick time events, and that was sweet. Like you saying, when you're falling down, you're just doing these quick time events of just smashing him in the face and dodging his claws and shit, and super cool, man. I love those. They make me feel like my reaction times are on point. Well done, Marquino.
Very good, very good. And well, with the end of Nemeroth, there's a little bit of an epilogue, and Leandros' betrayal and the Inquisition's hold on. Okay. Leandros' betrayal and the Inquisition's judgment. Leandros' accusation. Following the battle, Leandros, still distrustful of Titus's unexplained resistance to the war, accuses him of heresy and corruption. You just bodied a dang Chaos Terminator and smash him in the face, and you still have the gall to tell him to say he's a heretic?
Just save this planet, yo. This Captain Titus single-handedly saved this whole fucking planet from not only orcs but chaos, and he's still getting grief from this Leandros.
Despite all Titus has done to save Graia, Leandros insists that this immunity to chaos suggests that he's been tainted. He contacts the Inquisition, the powerful, feared organization dedicated to rooting out heresy, to take Titus into custody and determine his fate.
Well, I insist, Leandros, that you're an asshole.
Like I said, I got stuff to say about Leandros at the end of this, but Titus's arrest. The Inquisition arrives, led by an inquisitor who listens to Leandros' claims of heresy against Titus. Despite Titus's service and the fact that he single-handedly prevented the chaos incursion from spreading, the Inquisitor views any accusation of chaos as deeply suspicious. The Inquisitor, flanked by members of the Black Templar Space Marines, decides to arrest Titus, believing the further investigation is necessary to determine whether he has indeed been tainted by chaos. Titus's acceptance of his fate. Titus, though frustrated by Leandros' betrayal, that is a very, very big understatement, accepts the Inquisition's judgment with stoic resolve. As a Space Marine, he is bound by duty to the Emperor and understands the Inquisition's concerns, even if he disagrees with their suspicions. Titus's fate is left ambiguous as he is taken away by the Inquisition for trial, with the suggestion that his loyalty and resistance to chaos will be tested once more.
Man, I love that. That's where we go for it, Nick.
I was just gonna say, I love that the Inquisitor shows up with the Black Templars, like the most zealous Space Marines.
Yeah.
Yep. And meanwhile, Titus is like, "Yo, I just saved this. Do you know how many fucking Chaos Space Marines I killed? You think these two Black Templar?" Like, it shows that Titus's like duty and purpose is beyond himself. You know, like he is loyal, man. And this is where we leave this guy, this character. For 14 years, I wondered what happened to my boy. No sleep every night. Just what happened to
every night?
To him,
I'm telling you, in Space Marine armor, they need to start putting like aircraft black boxes into them so they can go back and re-listen to like entirely what happened, firsthand accounts.
Yeah. I will say this about the one Inquisitor. He seems very, obviously he still treats his Leandros' accusation as like, this needs to be investigated. However, he seems very, in the cutscene, he seemed very lax. He was just like, okay, yeah, we'll take you in. I guess we'll find out what goes on. But he wasn't so adamant to accuse Titus of being a heretic. It was just like, okay, we're just following procedure at this point. Like almost like he doesn't actually believe it, but he's still going to investigate it anyways because that's his job.
Yeah.
As I said earlier in the episode, I love that Titus just kind of backtalks him and like squares up to him. Well, talking about tragic irony, Act 3's conclusion is tinged with tragedy as Titus's heroism is overshadowed by suspicion and betrayal. Leandros' rigid adherence to the Codex Astartes blinds him to Titus's self-sacrifice, leading him to falsely accuse his captain. This highlights the rigid and sometimes destructive nature of the Imperium's unyielding doctrines, which in this case lead to the potential condemnation of a hero. Titus's journey reflects the themes of honor in the face of sacrifice. Despite all he has endured and the lives he has saved, he is willing to submit to the judgment of the Inquisition, placing his duty above personal vindication. Titus embodies the selflessness of the Space Marines, putting the Emperor's will and the Imperium's safety above his own. And then, although Titus's fate is uncertain, his efforts to defend Graia has brought the Imperium's precious time and preserved a critical Forge world from falling to chaos. His actions leave a lasting impact on Gaia and the Ultramarines, though his story ends in ambiguity and potential martyrdom. But yeah.
It was pretty cool. A couple things that we never really mentioned because whatever, they weren't crucial to the game. But we mentioned earlier Dawn of War, and you play as the Blood Ravens in that. And they did this nice little homage too in this game where you see some Blood Ravens on this planet or whatever. And it was cool to see them in like, back in the day, it was good graphics as opposed to just the Dawn of War graphics. Very kind of cool.
I mean, that was like GW's way of basically officially canonizing the Blood Ravens since they were so popular. So that was really cool to see that.
Rambo says, Leandros is Randall from the Recess. Fuck that fucking postured little bitch. Yeah, goddamn. Yeah, that's like a meme only 35-year-olds will get. I think the three of us get it, but for the young audience, go watch some Recess. Classic show.
Oh yeah,
I've not watched Recess in 20 years maybe.
I don't want to out you, but you have some kids. I won't say any more about that. But do you ever screen? You ever go back and try to introduce kids to shows you watched as a kid?
Oh, dude, my daughter loves Courage the Cowardly Dog and the old
sure.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Classic.
Sure.
Yeah, we're a little bit of a spooky household anyway, so it's very fitting. But she loves those.
I was watching some Magic School Bus the other day, and that's a fucking trip. That one for sure.
Oh yeah.
Man. Because you brought up Courage the Cowardly Dog, Nick, I got to say this. That's it. I'm getting me mallet.
Go on a little side tangent here. Did any of you guys ever watch the old Thomas the Tank Engine where it's the stop motion with all the different faces and stuff?
Yep, I remember that.
But yeah, I've watched that a couple times with my daughter. I'm like, man, this is like nightmare fuel a little bit.
It's
crazy. The episode where the one train gets bricked up.
Yeah, yep, Edward.
Alive.
It's crazy watching shows from back in the day and watching shows now for children and seeing the difference in the pacing, the colors, the content. It's such a different vibe, the stuff that we grew up on now as opposed to now where kids grow up on TikTok and their fucking attention span is quick and they need flashing, they need colors, and they need constant fucking go, 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 go. Where some of these older shows really kind of let you ease into the story a little bit better for sure. The pacing was much slower.
Yeah, my daughter's a huge fan of Bluey, and that's the one thing I like is that it's a little bit slower. I've probably seen that show a million times now.
Classic.
But,
yeah, we'll jump to character breakdown. We'll just give a quick little overview, some cool stuff. We'll start with the main man himself, Captain Titus. The overview. Captain Titus is the protagonist of Space Marine, serving as the commanding officer of the Ultramarines 2nd Company. He is a veteran warrior known for his courage, sense of duty, and impressive combat abilities. Unlike many Ultramarines, Titus exhibits a level of adaptability and pragmatism that sets him apart, especially in the chaos-ridden environment of Forge World Gaia. Personality and traits. Titus displays a unique mix of compassion and pragmatism, which contrasts with the rigid, dogmatic approach of many Ultramarines. He's deeply loyal to the Emperor and the Imperium, but often shows that he values human lives more than blindly following doctrine. This open-mindedness becomes a point of tension, especially with Leandros, whose suspicion of Titus' apparent immunity to chaos and corruption. This is an interesting, almost meta kind of thought here. Ultramarines have evolved a lot over the last 15 years. Back in the day, this was in the era of Matt Ward, and when Matt Ward was writing codexes and he was writing stupid shit like every chapter wishes they were the Ultramarines and everyone looks up to the and it's so cool that whoever came up with the story arc for Titus is fuck Matt Ward in that. There's more to them than just following the rules and being the best, or it was a cool little take of taking that and just flipping it.
Yeah. For people that don't know out there, the Ultramarines are definitely the poster boys of 40K with the Space Marines. They're the blue ones that you always see.
Yeah. Are they named after this blue seas of Ultramar? Or are they named because they're ultra, like, good Marines? Hard to say.
Ooh, yeah.
Take a poll on the Discord.
Rambo
The
has an
role-
interesting quote about Titus. Says Titus should have been brought back in canon as a captain, mainly because he doesn't speak in a third person like Cato. Cato Sicarius.
Yeah. Fuck that guy too. Yeah, there's a lot of awful Ultramarine characters, but Titus really redeemed Ultramarines in my eyes, man. Like anytime I think of them, I'm
100%.
like, yeah, okay, they're not that bad. Even if there's 1 in 1,000 Ultramarines that is cool, they're now cool.
I mean, one could argue Titus actually follows the Codex Astartes even more so because of how he conducts himself. But I digress.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to talk too much about Space Marines. I've been actually like containing myself not to bring up like anecdotes and stuff from that game. But the one thing that I love about Titus and Space Marines 2 is to see his internal torment, like his split from everything he's dealt with from the first game, to see that kind of bleed over into the second game is really cool.
Nice. Yeah, I can't wait. I've done like 2 missions of that, and I plan on just playing 1 mission a day when the kids go to bed, and just fucking absorb myself, turn the volume up really loud, and just get after it. So Titus's role in the story. Titus is the ultimate hero, leading his team with unwavering resolve and engaging directly in battle against Orks, Chaos forces alike. Throughout the game, he serves as a figure of resilience and tenacity, showing an extraordinary ability to resist the psychological effects of chaos, which ultimately leads to questions about his loyalty. Despite his victories, his resilience to corruption makes him a suspect in the Inquisition, highlighting the dark irony that even the most loyal heroes of the Imperium are often treated with suspicion. There's no one innocent, only varying degrees of guilt. Notable relationships he has to Leandros. Titus's relationship with Leandros grows tense as a young space marine becomes increasingly wary of Titus's resistance to chaos, revealing a split in their loyalty and approach to doctrine. And Sergeant Sidonis. Titus and Sidonis share a strong bond rooted in mutual respect and years of service, with Sidonis often showing unshakable faith in Titus's leadership. Yeah, like Sidonis was a veteran of his own. Like we're talking about him up next. I think I included how many centuries of service he had, but like this guy's a veteran. He's seen some shit for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I'm glad you actually gave me Sidonis instead of freaking Leandros. So I'm going to put on my happy eyes right now for reading on him. So Sergeant Sidonis, Giga Chad that he is, honored be his name. Sergeant Sidonis is Titus's second in command and loyal veteran Ultramarine, known for his steady presence and wisdom. As a seasoned warrior, Sidonis brings years of experience to the team and is highly trusted by Titus. Personality and traits. Sidonis embodies the seasoned Space Marine with a firm belief in the Emperor's will, tempered by years of battle experience. He's grizzled, wise, and unshakable, always quick to provide encouragement and maintain morale, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Sidonis often serves as a voice of reassurance and counsel for Titus, reinforcing Titus's leadership. Sidonis plays the role of a steadfast ally to Titus, providing both practical support and moral encouragement throughout the mission on Graia. His loyalty is put to the ultimate test when he is killed by Nemeroth, making one of the game's most emotional moments and fueling Titus's determination to eliminate the chaos threat. So, just like what Mark was saying, this guy has been through some shit, and you can actually see it like on his face. He looks even more old and wizened than Titus himself, just to signify like he's been through the ringer more than once.
Yeah, he's got 2 service studs, which could each donate 100 years of service, and he's got a great fucking beard.
Oh,
What do you
fantastic.
want?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And the service studs, isn't it like silver is like 50 years and gold's like 100 years or something? I can't remember off the top of my head exactly how they work.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that there was actually a color difference. That's kind of a cool differentiation.
Yeah,
I'm gonna Google it
they
while
are
we're-
differentiated by metal, but I can't remember the exact numbers.
Yeah, because
So-
like there are like 50-year service bolts, 100-year service bolts, but yeah, interesting. Cool.
Yeah, here, give me
Uh,
just a second. I'm gonna look it up while we're Okay,
Well,
so
you do.
a silver stud. So I guess each chapter has their own variations. So like the Dark Angels, a silver stud is 50 years, gold stud is a full century. But then there's some that have like an ebony stud, which is 10 years of service with the chaplaincy. But yeah, it looks like for the
Ah,
most part, like silver is 50 years and then gold is a century.
Interesting.
cool. I like those specialty ones as well, like the ebony for the chaplain. I think I'm gonna
Yeah,
have to include some stuff like that when I do more Space Marine lore writing. It's cool little details like that that really kind of can flesh shit out.
Absolutely.
it's super cool.
Some notable relationships that Sidonis has. Titus, their relationship is one of mutual respect, with Sidonis showing unwavering loyalty to Titus's judgment, even when others question it. Leandros, Sidonis, for Leandros, Sidonis occasionally mentors Leandros, but their ideological differences about the Codex Astartes lead Sidonis to often side with Titus. So I also got to bring up the point, since we basically made the point that Sidonis is quite a bit older than Titus. Why wouldn't he have been made captain as opposed to Titus? Obviously, we wouldn't have a Space Marine game, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, like not everyone is captain worthy. You know, some people are better at being a sergeant. They talk about that with some Space Marines, where it's like he's reached his peak as sergeant, or you know, some don't get that rank at all, and they just go right to veterans. And it's like, you're not a leader at all, but fuck hell yes, you can swing a power hammer.
Yeah. One thing I got to say is I love that since it's a British game, they call
Gerald
them
died.
lieutenants instead of lieutenants. I always thought like calling it a lieutenant is so much cooler than a lieutenant.
That's so funny. My wife actually asked me if there's a difference in that today, and then I told her, but I told her they're the wrong way. And now I know that I told her the wrong way.
Yeah, I guess during like Revolutionary War times or even before that, British naval officers were called lieutenants.
Yeah. I'm Canadian, so you know we toss random U's into our words, and sometimes we talk American. Sometimes we say the letter Z is Z, and we're fucked. Our measurement system is so janked. We're like, you know what? Let's use inches now instead of millimeters.
So it is so funny that you say that, because I spent my formative years living in the UK actually. So I got used to spelling everything with like use like favorite and color and all that stuff. And even the way I write my dates by flipping the month and the day, and then moving back here to the US, having to unlearn that because people look at it like, why are you misspelling this word?
Yeah, I'm currently rocking a Spanish computer, so every time I type anything, I just get squiggly underlines for every fucking word, and then it autocorrects everything in Spanish for me. So, you know, that's what I'm dealing with. Yeah.
Awesome. I was going to mention too before we hop into the next part. Rambo says he doesn't look a day over 200. Does it explicitly state exactly the life expectancy of an Astartes? I know, like Dante, he's one of the oldest at 1500 years old. I can't remember how old they can live to without going into stasis a whole bunch.
I think there was an Iron Warrior. Now, granted, this was a special circumstance, but there was an Iron Warrior during the Great Crusade that was clocked in at over 4,000 years old, and this was not accounting for any kind of warp shenanigans. But the special circumstance being, I think it was the Herud, the Xenos that have like the time manipulation weaponry, because the Iron Warriors were facing against them. Like, he got hit with that quite often, so he aged in like to the thousands. So I think even though like technically he had only been alive for maybe a couple of hundred years, like biologically he was like 4,000 years old.
That's so interesting. Yeah, was that the guy who wore like the metal faceplate or whatever?
I can't remember, but I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's another story too of a salamanders who I think he is also from the Great Crusade era, and his ship crashes on a planet. And I forget why he never leaves his ship, but basically jump forward 10,000 years and some people go and find his ship, and he's still just sitting on his throne. At this point, he's basically like, he's fucked. Like, he's immobile, essentially. I think he even dies in this kind of book.
You telling me they don't put him into a dreadnought?
Honestly, maybe they do. I don't know. I haven't read that one, but that's the ultimate goal. I think even toss him in there. Give him another couple centuries of service.
I mean, you got Bjorn the Fell-Handed, who is about 10,000 years old, but he's a dreadnought, so that kind of doesn't count. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I remember hearing about dreadnoughts for the first time, and to not be able to feel or see anything, and to be only woken up for either you're going into combat or they're putting you on parade. Those are like the only two times. Otherwise, you're in stasis most of the time.
Basically.
The chat's just tossing around some ages. So we got Grimnar, who is over 600. Dante is like 1,000, but I think Nick, you're right. It's closer to 1,500 at this point.
Yeah, 1,500.
Calgar is around 400, I believe, and I think there is the chaplain that Calgar serves with. I forget. He's a tyrannic war veteran, but that guy is supposed to be like 200 years older than Calgar, so he's probably around that 600. Cassius, his name's Cassius. He's probably around 600 years old too.
And I think in Hell's Reach, like Grimaldus himself actually points out, like we've been serving the Black Templars for like over 2 centuries or something like that. So you can figure he's around 200 to 300 years old.
Yeah.
Right. But that's the thing, is you never hear about an Astartes dying from old age. They're going to die in combat or some other thing first, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've got Brother Leandros. All I've got to say about him is he's a Boy Scout, and he sticks his nose too much into the Codex Astartes. And Mark, if you want to go on to Inquisitor Drogon.
Yeah.
No,
Okay,
I'm kidding. So, Leandros is a young, zealous ultramarine who holds an unshakable loyalty to the Codex Astartes, the doctrine that guides the Space Marines. He is the most by-the-book member of the Titus's team, and his rigid worldview makes him the least flexible of the group. Yeah, Codex Astartes written by Gilliman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha.
Prime Marco.
Yep.
Yep. Leandros is fiercely loyal to the Ultramarines' doctrines and sees the Codex as a sacred text that must be followed to the letter. His devotion to the rules of the Codex Astartes and his inexperience makes him suspicious of Titus's more flexible approach. As the game progresses, Leandros' faith in Titus begins to waver, culminating in him reporting Titus to the Inquisition. Leandros represents the tension between loyalty to doctrine and practicality in warfare. His suspicion of Titus's resistance to chaos drives him to report Titus, despite Titus's heroism, revealing the dangers of dogmatic thinking about the Imperium. And then some of his notable relationships are Leandros' relationship with Titus grows strained as he becomes more convinced that Titus's immunity to chaos is proof of corruption. And I was wondering, so it never outrightly states what causes his resistance, but do you think it's more like on the lines of like how the Grey Knights are resistant to warp fuckery, or do you think maybe he has like a little bit of like blankness in him where it just doesn't quite affect him like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Maybe let's save it for the end, because I do have some questions at the end.
Okay.
There's a few on the line of that, so we can get our minds perculating now to
just
answer that.
Putting this into your brainwaves.
Yes, exactly.
And then finally is Sidonus. Though Sidonus tries to mentor him, Leandros' loyalty to the Codex often puts him at odds with Sidonus' more flexible interpretation of doctrine.
Yeah. Cool. We got some fun comments here. Moose Viking says their biological age stays fairly consistent, but the damage they take in their lives affects their ability to maintain it. So yeah, that's a cool way to look at it. You know, like after you have so many scars and 90% of your body is now scar tissue, it makes you a little less mobile, you know, kind of good way to look at it. So while biologically you're fine and you could live forever, essentially, eventually just the wear and tear catches up to you. The guy that we were talking about, that Iron Warrior, Jack says is Barbosa. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that's who it was. There's a fucking great story. One of the best stories is where he's holding his fortress against his brothers during this siege and whatever. And he just like, booby, he home alones the whole fortress, you know? And at the end, I don't want to spoil what happens, but it ends with a bang. I'll say that. We got some lobster facts for you from Rambo. Lobsters are sort of immortal. They don't die of old age. They usually get killed or die of disease. Yeah, I've heard that before. So, That's like a
Mhm.
cool water creature fact. Yo, I live on the ocean. I seen some octopus today, and it was so fucking cool. This octopus,
Oh,
man.
that's
The ocean is
awesome.
full of crazy creatures, man. Like, the octopuses are the coolest thing, though, by far.
See, you talk about this kind of stuff, and I just imagine you from like Castaway, like spearfishing, like trying to get some crabs and some lobster for dinner.
Fuck yeah, man.
And then
Literally,
trying to
that's
start,
what I get up to some days, for sure.
and then trying to start that bonfire to cook up your dinner. Ha! I made fire.
I am a man.
Is your wife actually just a volleyball with a bloody handprint on it?
Yeah, that's better than Trevor Buzak, but yeah. No, for sure. That's what my wife's like, just a big old volleyball head. I don't know what that makes my daughter, but tennis ball? This is weird. We'll carry on. Jump into War Boss Grimskull. Gerald, take it away.
War Boss Grimskull. Okay, now I'm not gonna do the voice. Don't worry. Grimskull is the brutal and bloodthirsty orc war boss who initially leads the orc invasion of Graia. He is a formidable foe, towering over his enemies and displaying a ferocious enthusiasm for violence. Like most orcs, Grimskull is straightforward in his desires. He wants a good fight and nothing more. He relishes the chaos of battle and is driven by orc craving for endless combat. Grimskull's personality is defined by his simple, brutal nature, a trait that makes him a terrifying enemy. Grimskull serves as the main antagonist in the first half of the game, leading waves of orcs against the Ultramarines, showing surprising resilience. His role as a force of nature. Antagonists contrast sharply with the more insidious, manipulative threat posed by Nimroth and the Chaos Forces. And if you could call this a relationship, his relationship to Titus, Grimskull sees Titus, Space Marine, as an opponent worthy of his attention, and their confrontations add intensity to the game's early battles. And
I ain't so easy to kill, Hume.
He says right before you finally corner him and then just blow his head open with a bolter round. Such a satisfying moment.
Yeah.
Man, I'm gonna have to find a picture of it and send it to you later. Someone did an entire orc tabletop army, and they're all hiding in barrels and boxes or behind like cardboard cutouts of Space Marine, and it'll have written under it,
Fuck yeah.
"Almost Space Marine."
Classic commandos. The next character we'll talk about is Inquisitor Drogon. Inquisitor Drogon is a highly enigmatic figure tasked with researching and weaponizing the power source. At first, he seems like an ally with critical knowledge. He never seems like that, man. I seen him at first glance and like, this guy's fucking gonna betray me. But later, revelations uncover a more sinister truth about his involvement with chaos. Personal traits. Drogon is initially portrayed as the quintessential Imperial Inquisitor, secretive, focused, and willing to go to any length for his research. However, as the story unfolds, it's revealed that he has been manipulated by chaos forces, using the power source to draw Graia's inhabitants into the warp. His role in the story. Drogon's research sets in motion the events that lead to the chaos invasion of Graia, making him an unwitting pawn of Nimroth. The reveal of his corruption illustrates the dangers of tampering with forbidden technologies and serves as a warning against overreaching in the pursuit of power. Notable relationships. With Titus, he respects Drogon initially, but his opinion changes on Drogon's true role in the events of Graia is revealed. And Nimroth. As the pawn of Nimroth, Drogon becomes an indirect antagonist, unknowingly furthering Nimroth's goals. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, so
Cool
one thing I want to
though.
say about Drogon, though, is I think it kind of hints in the game that he actually died some part before the game, and his corpse, is possessed by Nimroth. It's not like he's like actively helping him. He's been possessed by the sorcerer.
Yeah.
I think one of the big hints was right before you meet him, you can actually overhear him on the comms. He's trying to speak. He's trying to use like a voice password to access like the command console for the power source and whatnot, but it was not recognizing his voice. And that was supposed to be your first hint that, okay, this isn't actually Drogon. This is a demon possessed Drogon, or a demon possessing his corpse.
Yeah.
From Jack's here. from Jax here. The haircut gives it away. Comb over equals chaos.
Yeah, and then like Nick said earlier too, he had those rends in his armor, implying that he had taken some serious fucking damage.
Oh yeah, he had been through it. I just want to throw out too, if you guys, listeners out there, love Gerald's orc voice, go back and listen to the Dad Hammer episode 4. He does a awesome war boss. War boss
man.
Draka. Yeah,
You're too kind, good sir.
When he gets sucked out of the fucking like ship or whatever, and you're like, "Whoa!" and you even do like the fade. I remember hearing that the first time
it's
and just
perfect.
howling that, just like, "Yo,
I
master of many voices."
I keep throwing it out there to Mark that in season 2 of Dad Hammer we got to do like a callback or bring him back or something.
Yeah,
that'd be super.
Oh, he ain't dead. And now with Inquisitor biologist Marcus becoming a part of the Xenos Ordo Xenos retinue, there's going to be some more Xenos encounters as opposed to just hanging out with plants and flora and fauna.
I'll gladly do a Necron voice for you too. You heard my voice reel, Mark. So
yeah, that's pretty cool.
Just gotta speak into like an old-fashioned megaphone. Get your voice as robotic sounding as humanly possible.
Yes.
Well, talking about the big boy himself, the Chaos Lord Nemeroth. Nemeroth is a Chaos Lord and the primary antagonist of Space Marine 1. Determined to corrupt the power source and ascend to demonhood, he is calculating, manipulative, and driven by a lust for power. You sure he's not actually trying to lust for Slaanesh there?
Yeah, do we think he served? Well, maybe we'll get to the end. Actually,
Nemeroth embodies the seductive again. Lust, seductive. Evils of chaos, blending charisma with pure malevolence. His ambition and desire to wield ultimate power at any cost make him both a symbol of dangers of chaos and personal threat to Titus. Nemeroth's ultimate goal is to complete a dark ritual to achieve godlike status, which would result in Graia becoming a staging ground for further chaos incursions. He represents a terrifying existential threat to humanity and tests Titus's will to resisting chaos. I'm just saying, if they ever came out with a game that had Slaanesh in there, it would be rated like NC-17 or like a rated R style game.
Yeah. And I think that's there was a discussion about that, because I don't want to go too much into Space Marine 2, but there is something else that shows up, and some guys are talking about chaos showing up in games, and they were saying like the safest bet would probably be Zinch, because his stuff is just burbs. Corn you might can get away with, but it's like overly a lot of satanic looking stuff with the bloodletters and the bloodthirsters. Nurgle is just zombies. Or you can also make it like extremely disgusting, but then Slaanesh is just straight up NSFW, just full stop. So
Now here's the fun thing about Slaanesh though, like they appear to you what is most desirable to you. So like every time I've been looking at them, I just picture Christian.
Oh damn.
Yeah.
And most of the time they're naked too, so
a bunch of naked Slaaneshy Christian running around.
Oh,
that's my boy. Yeah.
What's funny is most of the time when you see Slaaneshi demons, the top half's either male or female, and the bottom half is the opposite gender. So what does that say?
Or if you look at the Keeper of Secrets, it's kind of literally split down the middle. So
split the difference. Yes. Yeah, I don't know if we keep derailing on Slaanesh. I could make some inappropriate jokes, but
yeah, Lorehammer Legal already has their hands full after last episode.
Lorehammer Legal. Lorehammer Law Lords. Come on, get it straight before they fire a lawsuit.
Yep.
You know how many emails I get from them? It's going to take a little bit of time before I transfer over to this new name.
New name. And we'll jump to the last character, my favorite character of all, the bonus character, Lieutenant Mira, my daughter's namesake. Overview. Lieutenant Mira is a human Imperial Guard commander on Graia, responsible for leading the Astra Militarum against the Ork invasion. Though not a Space Marine, Mira is a brave and resourceful leader who respects the Ultramarines. Personality and traits. Mira is defined by her bravery and commitment to her troops. Despite the overwhelming odds, she remains focused on defending Graia and demonstrates impressive tactical skills, adapting her forces to support the Ultramarines' efforts. Role in the story. Mira provides crucial support to Titus and his team, coordinating with them and holding key positions and managing defenses. Her cooperation with the Ultramarines overscores the collaborative relationship between the Astra Militarum and the Adeptus Sororitas, showing how humanity's survival often depends on alliances. Notable relationships. Mira respects Titus deeply and sees him as a symbol of hope. Their interactions reveal her admiration for the Ultramarines and her own commitment to protecting her people. One thing I loved about this character is oftentimes when we get strong female characters, they write them in their masculine. They write basically a masculine character. For example, in Space Marine 2, we got this happens within the first 30 minutes, so I feel okay with saying this spoiler. You run into a female Imperial Guard commander, and she's just this grumpy old cunt. Just so fucking rude. She's haggard as shit. She's just annoying. Where Mira is like, she's feminine. But like, even though she's still this feminine character, she still commands respect of her troops. And she doesn't do it by like puffing up her chest and trying to be strong. You know, it's a different way of leadership. And I really like that they kind of nailed that way of writing a female character.
Yeah, definitely. I love that they've got these strong female leads, and because especially in the Imperium, it doesn't matter if you're male or woman; they need the bodies, you know. So yeah, doesn't matter.
Yeah, those are the main characters kind of that pop up, and you know, we know the fates of a lot of them. We don't know what happens to some of them. Like, yeah, technically for 14 fucking years, we didn't know what happened to Titus. I don't know what happened to Leandros. I don't know what happened to Mira. I can only assume that she survived the Ork and Chaos invasion of the planet. You know, I can only assume such a thing, but we don't know. I don't know.
Well, I don't feel so optimistic about Mira's chances by the time of Space Marine 2, which is set. How far in the future? So.
Yeah, 100 years as Space Marines too. But you know, if she's got any sort of seen anything warpy,
retired to a paradise world.
Yep, they took her to the farm, just like my old dog.
Oh no,
that's nice. Yeah, so this game was interesting. We kind of mentioned it for a hot second there that there is some canon conflicts where he shouldn't have maybe been a captain or whatever, but they also resolved a lot of this in Space Marine 2. Yeah, let's talk some canon conflicts real quick.
Yeah. I guess I'll take it over from here. But the first Space Marine video game was initially set in what its developers considered a parallel or alternate version of the Warhammer 40,000 timeline. In this alternate timeline, the Ultramarine Second Company is led by Captain Titus rather than its canonical leader, Catus Acadius. Despite this leadership change, the storyline and events in this alternate timeline were otherwise identical to those of the official Warhammer 40k universe. I do think that's an interesting point. Like, when this was first developed, it was kind of like how they tried to treat the Halo TV series as like a parallel timeline thing, but we don't talk about the Halo TV series. That's a full rant on the Grimlore podcast if you ever want to hear
do that.
Anyways, we don't do that here. So it's interesting that they kind of brought that up, but we'll continue with how they resolved it. Space Marine 2 modified this background by retconning the timeline to place Titus as commander of the Second Company decades before Catus Acadius, or his successor in the era Indomitus, Sevastus Acheron. That sounds like a boss name. Instead of maintaining his role, Titus was imprisoned by the Inquisition, suspected of heresy, and kept in stasis for over a century. Following the death of
hold on. Let's stop here just for
okay.
Just so if anyone doesn't want to know any spoilers about Space Marine 2, now you have a couple seconds to quickly grab your phone and pause it as we're about to carry on. You probably
if you're listening on Spotify, hit the skip button like twice, like the 15-second skip, like hit it like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. Just don't want to spoil anything.
Or just pause.
It's a new game.
Or just pause this all together, go play Space Marine 2, and then come back and listen to us nerd out.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Fantastic. Shall I continue?
Take it away.
Alrighty. Following the death of Inquisitor Thrax, Titus was released and served as a Black Shield with the Death Watch as Watch Fortress Watcher Keep. Severely injured in service, he crossed the Rubicon Primaris to become a Primaris Lieutenant, a transformation necessary to save his life. Chapter Master Marnius Calgar, who had long believed Titus would one day return to the Ultramarines, appointed him as one of the 2 lieutenants of the Second Company under Captain Sevastus Acheron. This update essentially reconciles Titus's role in the Space Marine series with the official canon, resolving the original continuity discrepancy.
I do love that they took the time to actually do that and try to make this as canon as possible, because like I feel like they really nailed Space Marine 2 in so many different ways, both in like, I've talked about how powerful everything feels, but also the atmosphere of the game. Like it would be a shame if this wasn't considered canon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. I also want to say too, you had mentioned Acheron. I love that they gave him a Scottish accent in the Space Marines too.
Quite the diversity in Space Marine 2, from the 30 minutes I've played. Quite the diversity.
I also like to point out too, it's funny how the GW websites kind of come full circle. Like if you're used to browsing through their model range when you're trying to collect minis for your army, like you'll see some standout models like the captains, the different lieutenants and stuff, and then you see the promotional stuff for Space Marine 2 and Captain Acheron. Holy crap, he's the captain in the Phobos armor.
Yeah,
You got the main lieutenants and whatnot, and then of course you got your Tyranid bioforms that like basically line up with everything that came out with the Leviathan box set. And then all of a sudden, now that Space Marine 2 has come out, you go back to the GW website, and then it just leads to a bunch of models as seen in Space Marine 2. And it leads you to all those models based off of those characters, or the characters are based off from.
Yeah, I've always been like a tabletop first kind of lore second person, and to see some of these miniatures come to life in a video game was top notch for me.
Yeah.
For Space Marine 2.
Yeah, so good, man. I don't even like Primaris Marines, but I fucking look at it all day long.
Oh yeah. Some of the paint schemes out there are blow my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, like the paint schemes for the Horus Heresy minis are just like, man. But
well, I do want to get into it a little bit now that we've kind of talked about all the characters and everything. I do got a couple questions for you guys. So we had mentioned earlier about Captain Titus's resistance to chaos. What are your guys' thoughts on where that might come from? And do you think for him it's like a blessing or a curse, depending on the Imperium suite of heresy?
If Gerald's gonna let me go first by the silence over there, I think it has to do with willpower, honestly. Like that blank idea is a fun thought, but like, I fell in love with Titus. He ain't no blank. Like he's got charisma. But like, willpower. Does he just have such a strong will? And like his whole character arc is just his devotion to the Emperor and to his duty. And even when it comes to turning himself in, he's like, I just killed 1,000 fucking orcs and like 50 Chaos Space Marines. You think that like if he wanted to put up a fuss against that Inquisitor and those 2 Black Templar, he woulda, and he coulda. I think like it comes with his willpower and just like a core concept of who he is. He is just loyal and dutiful, and you can't quite break through that.
Yep. I kind of agree with Mark. Like, I don't think it's necessarily a blank thing, because he would also exude like another aura about himself, and that's just not who he is. I would hesitate to say maybe latent psyker abilities, but even then, it's not as pronounced as like something from the Libraria. So, I mean, I'm almost just perfectly fine with leaving it to be a mystery. So,
yeah. That psyker, like latent psycherness, like, that, maybe it could be that, but I just don't quite think so. There's no implication of it, or like, there's no kind of leading facts for that where,
I do have
Yeah,
some thoughts
yeah.
on that, but it's in relation to stuff that happens in Space Marine 2, so I'm not going to go into that for spoiler sake or whatnot. So I
Yeah.
do have other thoughts
Um,
beyond just that.
nice. Moose Viking says, possible for a Marine with gene seed to become a blank without being known. I personally think no. And I say this for two reasons. Reason one, we have not had any example of a blank Space Marine, so therefore I'm going to assume that it's not possible. And option number two, with gene seed, you have to be like genetically compatible. You know, you put 1,000 guys on the line and only one of them might actually be genetically compatible. So what are the chances that somebody with this blank gene, because I'm pretty sure it is like a gene,
Yeah, it's like
is
having
also
the same.
compatible.
Yeah, I think it's like having like the same blood type, but even on like a deeper like DNA gene
Mhm.
level. Like if you put
Exactly.
the wrong type of blood into someone, it's gonna coagulate and kill them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Um,
Grimaldus does question, any chance does he have a chimeric gene seed? Mark, would you like to take this over?
Get fucked, Grimaldus. No, it would, sure, maybe. But, like, nothing's pointing at that. There's no reason to think that. Maybe if he was wearing like a wolf pelt for some fucking reason, you're like, what's going on here?
Right.
But there's no pointers in that direction. So
Yeah. And the thing is, Ultramarines, along with Imperial Fist, is like the most stable of all the legions. So there's very little chance that it would be spliced with another legion's gene seed.
yeah, and just like why?
Yeah.
Who did this and why?
I mean, there might be some crazy Inquisitor or Tech Priest willing to do something like that to create a super Space Marine, but
Yeah, I got you.
Would you
I
say a
do have
Primaris Marine?
and then I do have a final question for you guys. So at the end of Space Marine, Titus gets royally screwed over. So I wanted to ask, do you think that heroism and loyalty in the Imperium are ultimately futile or doomed to go unrecognized? I mean, after all he's done to have the Inquisitor come in and to have Leandros question him the entire time.
Well, maybe I'll add to the stage Jax, since he always has things to say.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you have to say about that, Jax? I can't unmute you because they
My
chose to
bad.
mute themselves. So no, all good. Welcome back to the show, homeboy.
Hey, how's it going? Might have joined a little late. Nero, can you repeat your question?
Yeah. So, throughout all of Space Marine 1, Landris is constantly, second guessing Titus. And at the very end of the game, the Inquisitor's coming up and then questioning him. So, do you think like this sense of heroism and loyalty to the Imperium are ultimately futile or doomed to go unrecognized?
Well, depends. Like, in some cases, like Yarrick, his heroism was noted because he was like already out there. Like people already knew about him. Your average Joe, let's just say Ted charges a Chaos Space Marine, even though he knows he's gonna die. Nobody's gonna care. Yeah, Yarrick.
Yeah, that's the story of of 40K. It doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter how many war zones you win. Ultimately, your efforts are futile. We're in a 10,000-year long war where things have just stalemated, and how many guardsmen die every day, millions across the galaxy that never get their funeral pyre on a tomb world or a
Yeah, it's
grave world, whatever they
Yeah.
call them.
yeah, it's like that scene from Troy where it's like the mom talking to Achilles, and it's like, if you don't go,
Mhm.
your children will remember you, your grandchildren will remember you, your great grandchildren
Yeah.
will remember you. But after that, nobody's gonna remember you. But if you go and die, yeah, people are gonna remember you because you were a hero and you got
It's that
shot
whole
in the
thing about
foot.
legacy. Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah,
kind of
it's a
just depends
solemn
on the
lesson.
circumstances. So
Yeah.
What's a crazy thought?
But
Lorehammer might get remembered for like at least 3 years after we're all dead. So isn't that fun to think about? People could be listening to us have this conversation right now and in 100 years in the future. Isn't that a fucking trippy thought?
It is. Yeah. Hopefully, you're saying I don't die like next year, and that's 3 years after that.
Really do it.
No. This is not a threat. I wish you long life, my friend.
Oh God, I'm gonna end up with Eric and Mark's basement.
That's okay. You can just,
In my
come
tummy.
to Mars. You can just come to Mars with me because the flesh is weak. We can turn you into a good tech priest.
We'll jump to the next little thematic question here. Questions on story and lore. Which one? Okay, Nemeroth's ambition to achieve demonhood raises the question: is power worth any cost, even if it means losing one's humanity? Like, what really drives people to go to chaos and like to give yourself up and, you know, at any cost to get that power? Is it another one of those
Well, it
legacy
really depends
things
what kind
wants
of
to be
person you
remembered?
are.
Sure.
Probably, yeah. But who remembered Nemeroth in 40K like after he died?
I did.
Well,
He's never brought up again.
14
Yeah, I
years
mean, but-
later, I'm still talking about the guy. I can't sleep till I beat Space Marine 2.
I think one of the reasons we don't talk about him is because he died. You know, he never achieved his goal. But if he did achieve his goal and he was still alive, you think more people would be talking about him?
It's
Yeah.
kind of just like Thanos, right? Like in the Marvel movies, Thanos won. He's remembered because he like achieved his goal. Eventually, though, that was rewritten. But for that like span of like a year before Endgame came out, he won. Like that was like baseline. He won.
Right.
In
Yep.
40K, like in the actual setting, even in like Space Marine 1, Nemroth dies, then he's never brought up again. In Space Marine 2, only Planet Gaia is brought up when talking about Titus's background. And oh, spoiler, but if you guys don't mind, but in one of the back shots, I'm not gonna say which, in one of the cutscenes, the lantern Nemroth had, the artifact was just that. It was just in the background.
Gotcha.
And Gaia actually does come back up, but it's in relation to something else. But I'll talk about that later if we have time.
Yeah. I don't know. What does it say about me, I guess? But man, sometimes I like to see the bad guy win.
Yeah. That's 40K though.
You're in the right
Yeah,
universe. Yeah.
Everyone's the bad guy. And they always say history is written by the winners. So in this case,
Yeah,
Titus
that's-
won. So
Yeah.
He didn't write much of the battle reports though, so
well, it wasn't his fault. It was because of Leandros. But
We'll jump to the next question here, and this kind of tied in with what we were talking about earlier. Could Titus's story serve as foreshadowing of other legendary figures in the Imperium who can resist chaos, like the Grey Knights? There's the Exorcist chapter, and to become an exorcist, you first must become possessed and then fight a demon off yourself. And these exorcists, we're like, where does Titus get his power from? Like, how does he resist chaos? There are other examples of these heroes that are so heroic, or however we want to define their ability to shrug off chaos or to banish a demon even though they've been possessed. So it's when you're playing the game, you're like, what is his secret? But there are other people in the galaxy that have like a similar type vibe. Do we know any other cool examples or references or thoughts about that?
I'm reading the Night Lord's Omnibus right now, and my profile pic, Talos, my beloved. In the first story, spoilers for a book that came out like 14 years ago, I believe. But in the first book, a character named Reuven sedated him and was able to get each of the four gods to like show up and try to like tempt Talos. And Talos told each one of them individually to fuck off.
That's nice. Just like that.
Fabius Bile, fan favorite from the Emperor's Children, I think he was put up to like some kind of tribunal against Slanesh herself, and like he could feel her presence, but he was like such a staunch atheist that he is just like constantly reassuring himself, this isn't real. This is just some psychic projection. This is just a figment of my brain. It's like, this is not real. This is not real. This is not real. This is not real.
I also have to reassure myself like that when I'm looking at my volleyball Wilson wife.
It's oddly deflated. We have no idea why. So I've got a question for you because of this, and it's like a tangent to Mark's question. Because of Titus's resistance to warp, do you think he could ever be recruited for Grey Knights, or do you, when you're recruited for Grey Knights, are you like they're not going to recruit like another person from another chapter, right? Like you have to be an acolyte and be genetically changed to become a Grey Knight, right?
Yeah, it's like the Grey Knight's defining feature is that they use the Emperor's gene seed, which I don't know what the fuck that means. Like that, what the fuck is a gene seed? What are we talking about? Like the Emperor is not a Primarch, he's not a Space Marine. What the fuck are we talking about? The Emperor's gene seed. But regardless of how I feel, no, they are their very own distinct branch for sure.
Yeah, whenever you see an apothecary take out the gene seed, it's like a little orb with like these little tendrils coming off of it, like a gland from a body.
Yeah, like, and what the Emperor has that too for some reason. I don't know. It just seems kind of forced, but whatever. Yo, Jax, thanks for calling in. We got another guest, and we got I think 2 or 3 more questions that we'll get through. And yeah, always fun.
Peace.
Adios. Up next, we got Grimaldus. Welcome back to the show.
Grimaldus.
Well, he's in here. Well, maybe he'll jump in a second. Maybe he's just figuring out his mute or whatever. Let's read off the next question.
Yes. Whoop. We have activity.
Hello?
He's alive!
He's alive!
Grimaldus lives!
I dug my trench on this planet. I will either die or I will triumph.
Sons of Dawn!
All right,
Thanks for
Gerald,
having me
take it
back
away.
on.
Pleasure,
All
man.
right. I got a couple questions for you. Grimaldus. Let's do, I kind of like this one. How does the bleak design of Graia enhance the narrative's atmosphere, reinforcing the desolation and unending struggle of the Warhammer 40,000 universe?
Well, it wouldn't be 40K without, having some sort of goal to achieve, and then you're almost there, and you just smash it back down to this grim, dirty world that it is. It keeps the status quo, and it keeps us coming back and wanting more. So, like, you need to have that. You need to have it.
Yeah, I forgot to mention the coolest character of all in Space Marine, and that's like just flying servo skulls that just follow you around, and like there's like secret little mission tokens or whatever we're gonna call them, where you go into the dark corner where you're not supposed to go, and you find this floating servo skull, and then you hear this bleak playback of these citizens just getting butchered, and the servo skull is just monitoring them, and really adds to the environment of it all,
And I personally love grimdark settings. It kind of reminds me, it's like, how depressing can you be? And then you go on to the next person, like, now you got to one up it. Have any of you guys ever played the game where it's like you have to think of a superpower, but then the next person has to think of some horrible drawbacks to it? It's literally that's how grim
similar to that. Yeah.
That would be a fun
Discord event.
Yeah, I was gonna. Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say like some intro game to warm people up at the beginning of the episode. Come up with the psychic power, and the next person will come up with the downside. Sure, you can shoot lightning bolts out of your eyes, but also out of your ass.
Or more like you shoot them out of your eyes, but you can only do it once because after that your eyes are evaporated in your skull.
But then do you still get to shoot it out of your butthole?
Depends on if you've had Taco Bell for lunch or not.
Yeah. How resilient is your butthole? Yeah.
What's the 40K equivalent of Taco Bell is the better question.
Let's see here. Grox burgers, I think.
Yeah.
Grox
Yeah,
burgers are a
pretty
thing.
fair.
Yep. I mean, you got corpse stars, but then if you want to get fancy, but got another
question you like?
I think so. Oh, this one's interesting. How does the visual design of Nimroth's Chaos Forces reflect the seductive and terrifying aspects of Chaos itself?
Well, I originally like when the warp opens up and you just have a plethora of demons pouring out. Like that doesn't if that doesn't scream warp fuckery, like I don't really know what does. Just seeing this like plume of purple, just this colors that probably no one's ever seen or can even express what it
Yeah.
is. You'd be blown
Mhm.
away by that. Then all of a sudden you have bloodletters screeching at you, or little pink horrors just chuckling away. So I
Yeah,
think
like
I go
I
ahead.
think you described it perfectly with like the colors that you can't even describe, and
Yeah.
you're just in awe, and you're just caught up in it until a letter jumps out and rips you in half.
It's
I
like
wasn't in the
humans.
Daemonette.
It's like humans can't see an ultraviolet, but could you imagine if we could? Just like the plethora of it'd be so otherworldly.
Yeah,
Mhm.
cool.
Fantastic.
Jumping to the next little batch. These questions are kind of around morality and philosophy. Yes, everyone stroke your
Yeah.
beard hair if you have it.
Mine was grinded
Uh,
off in my transformation.
Okay, so I've got a question for you. Titus's duty is to protect humanity. Yep. Yet his own humanity is called into question, mostly by Leandris. Do you think it's possible for someone to serve humanity while also being alienated from it?
What's that phrase? It's one who lives for themselves. Something about dying for the emperor, or a life living for yourself is not the same as dying for the emperor.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
life living for yourself is not worth it. Yeah.
So I mean,
Mm.
it is kind of weird that they do a lot of attention into how he views it, but I don't know. I think he walks a fine line.
I
Yeah,
mean,
it's interesting, like his relationship with like the guardsmen and stuff, where it's like, yeah, like you want to save those guardsmen. Hopefully, those guardsmen survive the war and get to live on in the Imperium, and have children and a successful life. Like that's the goal. The goal is not to just have endless war and bloodshed. The goal is to have a successful and prosperous Imperium, and in order to do that, yeah, you kind of need to um, look out for humanity. You have, even though they're transhuman, these space marines, they still have to kind of look out for the humans.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that kind of brings up the point though, like about serving humanity but being alienated from it. I mean, that's a big part of being a space marine in general, not just for Titus, but all of them. Because like what Mark just said, I mean, they're transhumans. The sororitas view them as transhuman abominations that aren't in the ideal image of man.
Mhm.
And then you got the Big E himself, a 48,000-year-old, we assume, conglomeration of shamans, if you go back to the Warhammer episode on the Emperor. So he is just like a whole other level above humanity. It's just like he's all for humanity reaching its peak, but it's almost like he himself is so far detached that it's like, is he really human?
Yeah. And then like the whole big rift of the Horus heresy was like, Horus is like, we bleed for the humans, and at the end of the war, who gets the empire? Not us. The fucking humans do.
Sure.
And that was his
Yep.
big like contention point.
Thunder Warriors 2.0.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Final question.
Yeah, I do. I've got one final question for you, Grimaldus, and the rest of you guys. So if you were put into Titus's position, do you think you would serve with the same loyalty and duty, knowing that your actions are going to be met with suspicion, that you're going to be forever questioned for it, rather than with respect?
That's a dangerous question. I think
Mhm.
in Titus's shoes, as much as he's not able to succumb to chaos, I feel like I would just kind of have to dip my big toe in there, just to try it out.
Yeah.
But on that note, I think I would attempt to follow the tried and true as much as one does follow these guidelines of the Codex Astartes. But yeah, chaos does look pretty tasty over there.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, like I've been hurt before in my life, and it's easy to let like a seed of bitterness in, and then like all of a sudden, if you really, it'll fester and create something way
Oh, yeah.
bigger of a problem than it really. And then, you know, we don't live in a world with the warp and actual chaos gods whispering in your ear. The fact that he managed to like rebound after all the accusations and after all the trauma, PTSD, seeing Sidonis die in such a way, all this kind of stuff, he's still able to rebound. A testament to how cool this character really is.
Mm-hmm. Titus is just built different, man.
Yeah, built different. I would not. I would follow chaos like a little bitch boy for sure. And it's not that I wouldn't try to fight against it, man, but I'm just a little bitch boy when it comes to chaos.
Is Titus part of the greatest generation?
Yes, he is.
Probably.
America, fuck yeah. Yeah, man. Well, Grimaldus, any closing thoughts before we close this
Well,
out?
you guys did touch base on it, but I do love how now we have miniatures to go with the video game that we've been playing for, 14, 15 years, and now we have the sequel coming through. I still have yet to get myself my own little Captain Titus, but you damn well know he's going to be wearing a helmet when I do get him.
Fair enough.
He's like, I seen what I did to Nemroth's skull. Oh, I
I don't
gotta
want that.
fucking put this helmet on. I don't want
Yeah,
that.
right. At least in Space Marine 2, they give you the option to wear the helmet.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
awesome.
Little toggle. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks, Grimaldus. We will see you in the next episode or whatever. Adios.
Yeah,
to
thanks
you.
for coming on, man.
Yeah.
Great show, guys. Keep it up.
Have a good one.
All right. So I got one more little portion here, and this is more just a personal fucking rant. I remember playing this game back in the day. Another one of my favorite games is Gears of War. And when Space Marine came out, a bunch of like IGN and a bunch of these rock, paper, scissors and a bunch of these types of websites are like, oh, Space Marine's just a Gears of War knockoff. And I'm like, get fucked. Like, not only is Space Marine 20 years older than fucking Gears of War, also the game mechanics are completely different. One of my favorite things about Space Marines, and I mentioned it earlier, is how do you regain health? Well, you go and you rip your enemies in half. No other games like that. That's such a rare mechanic, you know? And the whole point of Gears of War was they used a very fun cover system where you run in and you slam up against walls and you're blindly shooting over the top with your lancers, and like, you know, sometimes you poke your head out, and like it's cover based and you're jumping from wall to wall. Where in Space Marine, it's the exact opposite. If you're in cover, you're a little bitch. The whole point is you kick through cover and you run headlong into your enemies without remorse, without fear, without hesitation. And it always drove me mad that these game people, you know, these reputable sources are not very reputable at all when they say such stupid fucking things like Space Marine is just a knockoff of Gears of War. So there's my rants. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the only cover you get is the orc bodies building up around you.
That's
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and also when it comes to Gears of War, you can't forget the roadie run, Mark. Come on, the roadie run is cover based, and you got the roadie run.
Yeah, Gears of War was sweet. Like they had the Lancer and stuff, and like, well, that's like a chainsaw. I'm like, you fucks, this is 25-year-old lore. You're lucky
Right.
I don't have a chainsword.
Yeah,
A
I
fun
always
comment
viewed them
from-
as two separate things. You know, they're not
Mhm.
like a knockoff of each other. It's its own category. You know.
And besides, you could also say it knocks off God of War as well. So come on,
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, those
broaden
quick
your
time
horizons,
events, man.
IGN.
Yeah,
Halo.
fucking
I mean, you could say that about all sorts of games.
Oh yeah,
They
both Jax use has a fun shooters and comment.
and kill people.
Jax
He's
has a
got
fun
aliens
comment.
in it.
In Gears of War, you hide like a bitch behind cover. In Space Marine, you are the cover.
Yeah, man.
So-
Imperial Guardsmen are hiding behind you as you tank like orc shots and shit, and you're just standing there laughing it all off.
People-
Like you're a god on the battlefield, man.
People forget how tough Ceramite armor actually is. Like, Mark,
Oh,
you
yeah.
remember the Astartes fan animation? Like, that's like
Yeah.
how well that stuff holds up.
Yeah, peak Astartes that. Like they're unstoppable, man. Like you see one Space Marine, they're like, our planet's safe. Thank the Emperor.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, awesome.
Well, I was told I need to get a better like exit saying, so join the Patreon.